people in the chat. We're just in the pre-show, guys. We're getting warmed up. Xavier's jamming over here.
There's one track that's coming up for too long that is heavy duty. It might be this one right here.
Shout out to Slower Pace for the Barber Shop Simulator.
Oh.
Turn it up a little bit.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been listening to this on and off pretty much every day.
Were you driving in the Midwest to this?
Yes. Actually, it helped me stay up at night.
I didn't know you needed help with that.
Let's just say it provided some excellent ambience amidst other forms of stimulation. And
no shortage.
Dude, I really wish this was a real game.
Well, before long, you'll be able to just prompt an AI to look at this picture and develop a game for you.
Dude, that's probably like within a couple of years. I literally think that you could just generate whole gameplays based on pre-established code.
Right.
I mean, and it would be an awesome game. Like, imagine like a early 90s version of like Grand Theft Auto.
I mean,
totally
even if you just took GTA and put like an 8-bit skin on it and retrofied it,
absolutely,
it would be so tight.
Replay value through the roof.
Are you ready to kick this off?
Oh yeah.
All right.
You're listening to the Zetetic newscast on the Zetetic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
Welcome to episode 43 of the Zetetic.news cast. As you just heard, we are your hosts, Dave, myself, and Xavier Diamant.
Yo.
Thank you guys for joining us. Today we're going to have a little bit of a different framework than we typically do. We don't have a word of the day per se. We've not had a show in a couple of months. So I thought it would be a good chance to revisit an episode we did in January of 2020 detailing the top 20 mega-singularities of 2020 because every once in a while I'll revisit this particular episode or the post around it, which you can find on Zetetic.news. And in many ways, the things that we prognosticated about and discussed in that episode, not only did they come to pass, but they're just as relevant today as they were back then. It's just the difference is there's so much validation that's happened between now and then that I think would be good fodder for the show for episode 43. But before we jump into that, to sort of kick things off, just came across this rap by a gentleman named Samson, who you can find on YouTube, which triggered me, was very timely and poignant, and I think speaks to everyone in many ways. And I think this is Xavier's first listen through on this, so I'm really interested to get your feedback, and I hope you guys enjoy this, so hopefully you can hear it.
I'm hurting. money draining. They take everything I make and you wonder why I'm complaining. I break my neck to make this money, then they just come and take it from me. My wages ain't that great in the first place, I should be paying you nothing. But they keep on coming, and they keep on taking. These motherfuckers go ham on me every time I bring them the bacon. And I wonder what it's for. Ukraine, great funding a war. Have we spent enough yet? Should I guess not? Look, here they come for some more. Fuck me, I'm sore. Sucks being poor. You had the same job for the last 6 years, wasn't struggling before. Back when Trump was in office, fuck all the junk that they called him. I never saw any of the shit that people always said he was in the comments. All of it was nonsense, I ain't even trying to ride him either. I'm just saying you gotta admit that shit was fine when he was the leader. It was fine when he was in charge. I never saw bills as high as they are. I never got chills just literally thinking about filling up my car. It shouldn't be that way. I don't care about Russia or Ukraine, but I do care about my own country. Is that insane? I care a lot about all the tons of money that we're paying, because it's mine, not yours, and I'm the one that feels the pain. I get taxed on my fucking ass for every dime I make. It'd be fine if they would spend my money wisely, but no way. It'd be great if they would take it and pay for important shit that benefited you and me, and not just wage wars with it. And where the fuck are all the liberals? I thought you stood against this shit. I thought the war machine was your enemy. Now you're friends with it? Now you wanna go to war? Now you wanna fight? Now you wanna pick sides in a feud where everyone is white? Now you wanna get involved and go and blow a person up? I'm just saying, I'm surprised this altercation ain't diverse enough. No one deserves this stuff. I just don't believe the tears you weep. Countries where brown people get bombed every day, I don't hear a peep, you fucking hypocrites. Thought the race thing was your shtick. I thought as long as white people were involved, you don't give a shit. Those are your words, not mine. I'm just wondering why. Why do we have endless money for them and none for Hawaii? Why is it every time Zelensky needs a loan from someone, we're the only ones that give it to him like we owe him something? We got issues of our own here at home that no one's discussing, and they keep growing cause no one in power is gonna do nothing. We're stuck. How the fuck we gonna help somebody else when we can't even reach inside our own pockets to help ourselves? We could allocate that money to our own people in different ways, to clothe and feed and bathe and let them know it'll be okay. We could definitely do that. Don't tell me it's not that simple. People overcomplicate this and make it some fucking riddle like can't just feed everyone, are you insane? You know how much that costs? Way less than we've sent to Ukraine, I know that for sure. You don't have to be a mathematician or a foreign relations expert to figure out that division. You don't have to draw a graph to see it would cost a fraction to solve half of the problems we have and stop them from happening. I'm just saying, what kind of fucking world we living in? So many billions we've given them, when's Europe chipping in? When we gonna start splitting and stirring up the dividends and begin telling other nations it's your turn to lend a hand? Listen, I don't think Ukraine deserves any of this, but I also don't think Zelensky is as great as they said he is. I don't believe the media when they blurt shit on their shows. You'd have to be naive to think this dude's as pure as driven snow. No one is, especially when you run a nation, dog. Your morals are compromised the minute that you take the job. So I don't trust Zelensky, Putin, Biden, or anyone. I don't think any of them give a fuck about all us little ones. All the people of Russia, all the people of Ukraine, most of the people of the USA probably feel the same. We don't want this shit, it's only the elites that do. They line their pockets, they profit from this, but not from me and you. Quite the contrary, in fact, we pay for it with our lives and money. They take chunks of everything we make, you soldiers die for nothing, so they can gain some more power and keep their banks fat. And all we get is table scraps. Fuck yeah, it makes me mad. Fuck yeah, I get upset. We're constantly ignored. Why the fuck I gotta pay for this? I don't want this war.
I got chills.
The Pentagon have $6 billion unaccounted for, but when I do my taxes, I'm afraid to be $1 short. I'm afraid I'll go to jail. I'm afraid I'll do some time if I don't pay you back the money that you wasted. That was mine. I can't keep quiet anymore. It's impossible to shut up. I'm sick and tired of being responsible for all your fuck-ups. But the question is, what we gonna do about it? There's never a plan of action. All we seem to do is shout it, and I'm guilty of it too. Always bitching and complaining, never walking, always talking, always lipping off and saying I'ma do shit, but I don't. And to be honest with you, that's the reason I don't make a lot of songs, and that's the truth. I'm sick of bumping my gums. I'm tired of flapping my jibs. Something needs to be done, and I don't know if rapping is it. We need a real solution, but we need to get together first, because unless we're all in this as a whole, it'll never work. However, what do I know? I'm just a moron with a pen, but there's power in numbers, and there's more of us than them.
The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on, continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like that kind of one-ups the urgency of Richmond, north of Richmond. That Oliver Anthony.
Yeah.
did. I mean, that one was all right, and it definitely strikes a chord, but this is much more gritty and to the point and visceral.
Yeah.
And covers a lot of ground.
A little less whiny, a lot more angry.
Yeah.
And that is when I said, it speaks to everyone. It speaks to me because I am angry. There were several parts of that really jumped out to me. The first one being, at the end, talking about how, he's sick of flapping his gums. Rapping is not the solution. That's why he doesn't make more songs, honestly, because it needs to be less talk, more walk. The other part was earlier in the song where he talked about, not just are we funding a bunch of amoral operations that are against our best interest, but the result of that is soldiers going and dying and killing other people in another country under the ostensible purpose of protecting our country, which on its face makes absolutely no sense. And I actually came across like an argument. I came across I don't know if you're familiar with the subreddit IMA, and it's like, I'm a dentist and X, that sort of thing. So that's the format. And this guy was like, I am an executive at a company. I'm 42 years old. I haven't filed a tax return in 18 years. The reason is I don't want to fund war and a bunch of other amoral stuff like subsidizing corn farmers, which does all this other damage. And then someone was contesting that by saying, well, I'm a soldier, you're stealing from me because that money pays my salary, it pays for the equipment that I need to do my job. And he's like, you're not listening. Like, what you're doing, your job needs to stop.
Right.
It needs to stop. And so in order for that to happen, at least on a micro level, we have to stop feeding that system.
Right.
And so then he ties it together at the end about, I don't know what the solution is, but talking about it is only going to get us so far. And that really struck a chord with me because I think that we've talked about that on the show, like
absolutely
quintessential challenge, like, is Zetetic.news just a business model to like make money off of infotainment? Or is it going to be like a solution? This idea of like discussing in an open forum and inviting free speech advocates and truth advocates, I think both things are necessary at the end of the day. So, he's still making rap songs. We're still going to do episodes, but he makes a very poignant point that at some point you have to walk instead of just talk. And I was reminded of another triggering piece of content, which I'll try to find real quick here it is. This was, let me put it on the screen for you watching on YouTube or Twitter right now. This was Tim Kennedy, who I don't know if you can see, let me blow it up. There it is. Tim Kennedy, I think he was a Green Beret, military, like careerist military guy, very accomplished in the military. He then went into MMA. He's been on Alex Jones a number of times. He's friends with Joe Rogan, all that. If you haven't heard of him, it's kind of surprising because I'm an uncultured swine. And anyways, he posted this on his Instagram, about the Pentagon. We don't know where $2.3 trillion went. The White House, we don't know where $6.2 billion went, which is, there's a lot more that they don't know. They do know, but they're not going to tell us. The U.S. Navy, we don't know where an F-35 fighter jet went. The IRS, we know where that $601 went, and report it if you don't want to end up in jail. And he comments, we're turned upside down right now. It just can't keep going on like this. He's not wrong. No. I liked the meme. It makes sense. It strikes a chord. Everything is upside down.
Government hypocrisy,
but
sure.
My question to Tim is, what are you doing besides posting this meme to actually change the calculus there.
Well, right, and because it doesn't actually question the legitimacy of any of this. It's just like
they're doing it.
It's just like a laissez-faire acceptance of it.
The other thing is, I do have a certain part of me that has like respect in a weird way for military people, because it takes a lot of will to torture yourself, essentially, submit yourself to brainwashing, and pick up a gun, become physically transformed and molded into your military unit, and then carry out an operation that really goes against human nature in many ways. Warfare. Okay, takes a lot of will, and I guess I appreciate the sentiment, if the sentiment is, I truly believe that this action is going to, like, in some way protect my country. I can, okay, but, like, I can't get behind the fact that that is a delusion that you're giving yourself. You are deluding yourself. But that's almost a side issue. The point I'm making is, you have that much will to, quote unquote, defend your country, that you will go kill a foreigner who, I mean, you don't have a beef with, really. You're just told you have a beef with, and you carry it out. But you won't, like, pick up a pen and paper and challenge the powers that be. I mean, I don't know that for sure in Tim Kennedy's case, but there are a lot of these, like, alt figures out there in the blogosphere who, to Samson, the rapper's point, are a lot of talk, but they're not a lot of walk. And I do wonder, like Samson said, we have to do something. Where I feel like we're getting cornered into such a close quarters situation. We're almost given no choice.
I mean, yeah, they're getting ready to bring the hammer down and raid all the pensions, the IRAs, the 401ks, and just claim, oh gosh, I guess we overreacted a little bit in 2020, but this is the consequence, and we all have to bear it together.
There was another post in the ZNN Telegram, which if you're not a part of, you should go to our website, Zetetic.news, and click the Telegram button to join, because there's a lot of great info there that we don't get to discuss on the show and isn't, like, posted anywhere else. About, oh gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. What was it?
Well, I mean,
the congressional committee that supposedly passed a bill to ban the Fed from creating a CBDC, and I'm like, that is political window dressing. Yeah. Like, wake me up when they overturned the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 and just basically demolish and disband and, like, defund the Federal Reserve, and you would have to defund the IRS essentially, because,
or, how about just an honest audit and accounting for real of all the actual interests and stakeholders at the table that control the policy? We don't have that. We have this illusion that the Federal Reserve is this kind of, like, public-private in-between, moderator that makes its own decisions and is independent of Congress, but, we'll take the suggestions and we'll have focus committees, just like the Delphi method. Let people air their grievances and, turn it into a bunch of political football. And, but we don't actually have an honest inventory. There's not a transparent inventory of all the controlling interests, all the international money houses that have specific percentages outlined in the ownership structure of this so-called Federal Reserve System, which is as federal as Federal Express. It has nothing to do really with this so-called government budget. It's this usurious money manufacturing legalized counterfeiting regime, and the IRS is basically their bulldog, their little toady mafia henchmen that goes around and breaks people's
Yeah,
legs.
and if you're a long-term listener, you might remember episode 28 of the Zetetic.news cast, which was December a year ago, or maybe a little more than that, where we had a activist named Sarah Michelle. She was formerly in compliance and ethics at the Federal Reserve, and she detailed like the backroom dealing that she personally witnessed, and then was basically persecuted for calling out, even though that was literally her charter, compliance and ethics, and that's par for the course. I mean, that is like how the system is engineered essentially at this point. It is fueled on words of art and corruption, to basically sum it up.
Yeah. Basically, like fake admiralty law, legalese, spellcast, manipulation of linguistics and terminological dominance and all that. Yeah.
So, jumping into sort of the framework of today's episode, the mega singularities of the next 12 months, I wanted to use our old post as sort of a framework to guide our discussion, and just segueing from that discussion about everything Samson rapped about and this precarious financial situation that the whole country seems to be in with inflation and this parasitic octopus known as the Federal Reserve. I mean, wasn't it today or yesterday that they're like, we're gonna hold rates, and it's just sickening to see the whole corporate world like wait with bated breath about. I see the chyrons because my wife likes to like watch sort of mainstream news in the morning just to get a feed on like what kind of propaganda is going to be served up today, what's happening in propaganda world essentially.
Right.
And I just hate it when these FOMC meetings come around, because I know all these corporations are just sitting there. I mean, I understand why, because the whole system is based on credit, and they just wait around for, and I'm like, why? The newscasters on these mainstream shows are brainless. They are complete robots. They have no journalistic integrity or gall at all to even put any kind of inflection in their what is it called, the thing they look at when they're
the teleprompter. Right, yeah.
They have no inflection or like level of skepticism about. They just read the chyron, and it's like, FOMC to meet, will they hold rates? And then they hold rates, and it's like, can anybody ask about like, or even like criticize at all that they're basically announcing their price fixing? They are literally announcing price fixing. It's kind of like if there was a consortium of people who decided what the price of lumber would be.
Right.
It's no different. Money and lumber, they should be treated the same in that sense, meaning that you don't have a consortium who decides what the cost of money is or the cost of lumber. And that's exactly what's happening. And the news just reinforces this. This is the way it is. This is the way it's been. This is the way it's going to be. And number 3 on our list was global currency reset. Is it a creative destructive event or overnight global impoverishment, or both? And remember, this is January 2020, and in many ways I think we would have already had this global reset if they didn't have the COVID pandemic ruse to use as a can kicking down the road.
Well, and we actually kind of presaged the whole threat that eventually became the monstrosity known as cerveza virus in the second category here, which was health wars. And the second one was that Seattle mandate of people couldn't re-enroll and take their courses unless they went through a whole course of pokes. So that was almost like a little bit of a presage of the eventual chaos that ensued in the next year and a half. So, I mean, we didn't think it would blow up to those proportions, but we did note that this kind of encroachment and unconstitutional treatment of people's activity was already getting within the medical system. So we had talked about Benjamin Rush too, leading up to all the lockdowns and how that was a pertinent debate.
But if you think, like, from a financial perspective,
right, it's almost like if you look at what happened within the first month of the declarations of all the shutdowns, the market momentum was all the way down, back to like 2005 levels. I mean, it should have collapsed.
That's
point.
kind of like
Right.
post 2008.
Right.
What should have happened is all of the real estate prices collapsed.
Right.
And people had to write off those losses and move on.
Right.
But that didn't happen.
No.
They reinflated it, which lasted
16 years now.
Yeah,
almost.
it's still going on in many places. Now,
Oh,
real estate has collapsed in other places, but I think by and large it's had a reflationary effect on the overall market. And when I think about where we were in 2020, of course, in many ways economically, like especially in the service industry, we were way more better off. So it's not like we were facing necessarily the kind of collapse that was manually induced by the cerveza virus.
Right.
But we were prognosticating, other countries were prognosticating. This whole BRICS alliance has been in the works for many years, going back even beyond when we did this episode. And so the trend was one of economic destruction. And we saw that not just because of the momentum of the macroeconomic system at that time, but also the manual induction of it through government intervention, literally telling companies to close. However, they've been able to manage this creative destructive event, which is why it is a creative destructive event, because they created it to destroy and reform. The way they did that is through PP loans and STEMI checks and all of that reflationary effect, which I think is waning because all of the all the special conditions that were afforded by the cerveza virus provisions, they're expiring. Those loans that were taken out, they need to be paid back. It was not free money. Even though it is free money, they fucking printed it out of nowhere. And that was another, like, to me, a key psychological thing that happened over the last few years is what we've known forever, essentially, that they can just print money and the whole tax system is
just icing on the gift cake.
Redundant at best.
Exactly.
Right? They can just print money and deposit it in your account. That became real for a lot of people.
Right.
They hadn't had that experience before. The closest it would come to that is either a WIC card, which is for a small minority of people,
and it's small regular amounts as opposed to like windfalls.
The refund, the tax refund. But that everybody knows that's not money that I didn't have to begin with. It was taken from me and then given back. So it's not the same as like those STEMI checks where I had money taken from me in a different way, the loss of my job, and then I get this STEMI check, which I guess is supposed to offset that or whatever.
I mean, you could even go back to the GI Bill as maybe one big example of that. People coming back from the war were basically afforded free education and housing and all this stuff because of their participation in this, worldwide conflagration. So I think we may be heading towards something like a digital, not a GI Bill per se, but something like a expiry-based CBDC UBI kind of implementation where it's like a hyper welfare state for basically everyone. My reply to that post on the ZNN Telegram about this congressional committee banning the Fed from creating
they would need to overturn the Fed to say that they've banned them from doing that because they've already done it. Like, our dollar system is already a CBDC. It's a 1.0 iteration.
It's like a beta version.
Now right. they have new tools at their disposal, but what's the whole concept of a CBDC is, like, to me, a big poster that says, look how antiquated we are in terms of, like, technology, because the technology that they would be adopting has been around for a long time at this point. But they have built out this huge dollar-based infrastructure and system. They can't just pivot overnight from one to the other. It has to be a thing done over increments, which is what we were seeing in terms of the proliferation of credit and credit cards and credit chips and new, basically everybody's going to be a payment processor, at a certain point. And you can pay on your phone, and you can get this chip in your hand, and the progression is towards a digitalization. You even see some retail stores, fast food joints and whatnot, not accepting cash.
Yeah.
And that's been around. And then that was accelerated as part of the creative destructive event that we prognosticated in this episode with the coin shortage. And you told a funny story pre-show about your use of the coins. I think you should tell that again, because I think it's apropos.
I mean, basically, went on a long August trip, kind of a series of festivications with the family, and we had sort of like a crossover, like kind of 5-seater, but we were gonna have to bring a whole bunch of stuff, and so I was like, let me see if I can just find one of those like early 2000 Honda Odysseys that are just like workhorse vans. And I found one for a really good deal, and it needed a couple things to get totally road ready, but one of the last little things that it needed was the cruise control needed to be fixed. And I sent it to a couple different shops, and like they probably didn't even look at it, and they were just like, "Oh, we don't know how to fix that. Oh, we're clueless about that." And so I just looked up a little jerry-rig hack on YouTube where you tape some coins together, and you put it right up next to this brake sensor, and over time, the sensor kind of gets worn and like expanded, and so you have to reactivate it. So usually you have to put some kind of little buffer or some kind of support. Gap filler, right? Exactly, like a wedge or something there. So I just put together a quarter and a dime and a penny and taped it around, and it did the trick. So I fixed this cruise control problem for 36 cents. Now, that's actually like the best use of those coins economically that you could probably imagine.
Think of what you could buy at a grocery store with that 36 cents.
Literally like nothing.
Maybe a good like comparison would be you could buy a couple pieces of double bubble, and then if you're MacGyver, you could like patch your boat with that,
right?
And then it might be a valid comparison, but
yes,
pretty much anything else.
similar kind of ingenuity there, because I mean, and that's like real like economic potentiation there, because basically coin money at this point are basically just like insignificant, like inanimate objects. I mean, people don't even hardly use change anymore at all,
right?
But think about the amount of money that I would have had to pay some shop to finally like figure out this little hack and then charge me out the nose. And all it took was, 10 minutes of looking online and with their various forums and stuff and doing it myself. And in under 20 minutes with 36 cents, I probably saved $200.
Easily.
So I mean, it just goes.
And
to
depending
show,
on the
like,
shop, you might have saved even more because they'll come back and be like, "We're not going to work on this unless we can fix these other things." Which
Right,
is like
yeah, they just-
$600.
Right, they just add on a bunch of stuff that doesn't have to be done for another 9 months to a year. But that's just kind of that's the corporate shop kind of rigmarole there.
Yeah. Moving on into our list of mega-singularities. You already touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think we need to maybe go a little bit deeper because it's probably one of the most of the bullets in this list, that the one that stands out to me the most is number 2, health wars. Because remember, this was January 2020, where the cerveza virus was really not on the tips of anyone's tongues yet in America. I think it had broken the news a little bit in China, maybe late in 2019.
Right.
But health wars is a topic that is recurring in all of our shows.
Definitely.
And the concept of vaccine mandates and the ill effects of the growing CDC vaccine schedule has been, a topic du jour. We also talked about the TSCA fluoride EPA lawsuit, which we covered and we've been involved with before the creation of ZNN. And man, what could we possibly say about this? I think as sort of, obviously, I think we were a bit prescient. I think we were very early as well in identifying the chicanery that came out of like Fort Detrick and UNC with respect to this whole agenda, as well as bringing up some older clips from, for example, what's the guy who invented the PCR test? Kerry Mullis. And other, folks who have talked about the FDA and their involvement, and the CDC and their involvement in sort of just ongoing medical scams and fraud and malfeasance that has resulted in injuries really untold.
There's not even.
That's why we call it health wars. Is because we are a poisoned society, and I've talked before about like how do you calculate the economic cost of a population average IQ reduction of 5 to 10 points?
$100 trillion.
You can't, because maybe someone of that upper echelon IQ who was held back a little bit, they might have invented something that,
right,
whatever you want to use a conventional example, cured cancer. Because how good off would our society be if we, quote, cured cancer? Of course, I don't think it's going to be some miracle drug. I think it's going to be more of like an evaluation of the health wars that's happening and like what's being done to mutate our DNA such that we develop cancer.
Right.
I think, but maybe that person would be able to articulate it in a way to where we would change course. You know what I'm saying? Like the economic damage of that is incalculable. And now you look at what's happened since 2020 to the health of the people. I mean, it was a major warfare that happened.
Oh God.
And I'm feeling very retrospective right now, almost like we're not still in it, but we're very much in it.
Oh, yeah.
And as sort of like an addendum to this, an update, like what to look for in the future, I'm feeling more optimistic that the population has had enough of that line of propaganda. With that said, caveat, they're not, it's not like they're immune to other types of propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
If anything, what's been validated in the last few years is how susceptible.
Absolutely.
And that's my concern. Is like, I don't think COVID is going to be like because I've seen the headlines, you see them flirting with this idea, like we're going to release new VA-CCINE,
Right.
and we have this new strain. I feel like they've already kind of played that card out. They've had, Omicron and Delta and all this crap, and like I just don't see. It's like an addict. Like you're building the tolerance in the population, and people, although people still kind of like hypochondriac out about it.
Oh, they definitely do.
And obsess over it. I think the momentum of that initial propaganda is kind of wearing off, in the sense that like people are now realizing like the sickest they see anyone really is no sicker than they would be normally, or they're sick because they got the VA-CCINE.
Right. And I mean, part of it is also just, I think it's almost like a panhandling effect, where they ramp up this messaging to induce more stress and hypochondria and germophobia amongst the segment of the population they know is going to, get stressed out about it, essentially.
Right.
So it's almost just a way of, priming the pump and just sort of keeping a certain level of bewilderment and fear and compliance just kind of active in the psyche in the background. It's sort of like a
background noise.
A background noise, a lingering sort of torturous cloud that could come over and become tumultuous at any time in the future. And so it's just this kind of lingering dread that they're keeping around. They're not necessarily pushing it. They're not pushing it like they used to, because they know that particular corporate segment, money laundering trough operation, has seen its boost. And so now, we're in the middle of the whole military and industrial complex boost with the Russia-Ukraine stuff. So, and it's just going to go around in a big circle. It's this oligarchical corporatocracy gangbang around all of the national populations, and just all taking turns going around in a big cycle, just pillaging the population and pillaging the treasury, and aggregating destruction of potential on economic levels and political levels, cultural levels. And it's just like a big carousel. It's just a big ring around the rosy sabotage carousel. And so we had the big pharma, the big medica turn for a few years there, a couple years there, and now it's the military industrial complex's turn to rob the public and rob the public treasury, and and then it'll be insurance, and that'll come around to the housing market, and it all just goes around in a big circle. So you think there's probably maybe half a dozen major macro geopolitical sectors that are in the trillions of dollars in terms of their overall sway in the worldwide economy. And so every 6 years now, it's almost like they've set up this carousel where every 6 years there's going to be some reboot of these big heist campaigns and these big fear-mongering campaigns and these robbery campaigns that they've been engaging in for so long. And it didn't used to be like such a short period of time that they would do these big operations. They used to drag it out more, but now it's almost like the water's at 195 degrees and the frog's still in it, and they're just like, oh, just put it all the way up to 210 right now, and just see how long it totally takes to cook the frog. And it seems like they're just kind of going for broke, because in a lot of ways the genie's out of the bottle, the cat's out of the bag on a lot of different Decepticon fronts that they needed to maintain.
Let's go through them.
I mean, just the whole tax money printing thing. I mean, what's the point of tax receipts when you can literally just print money by the nearly 13-figure sums? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and the line in Tim Kennedy's Instagram post, which I put up on the screen earlier, I think that was a big well, fuck you.
Right.
Like you're gonna start tracking transactions over $601. Like, what an arbitrary number, anyways. Like, but also extremely low.
Right.
And the reality is, the bureaucrats, they think they're entitled to everything. They think they are entitled to the dollar value of everything. And I'll just be honest. Like, they are saying now that if you stake your crypto coins with a certain network and you earn new coins, that's income. And I've seen people defend the IRS by saying, well, yeah, I mean, if you grow corn and then you sell the corn, you have to pay a tax. It's like, well, you have to charge a sales tax, but why does the federal government get a cut of an ear of corn that I grow in one of the states I live in and sell it? And they say, well, you're using the dollar system, you're selling it into dollars, so you got to pay Caesar, basically. And I'm like, well, what if you just hold on to the corn and you preserve the corn? Does the IRS want to assign a dollar value to that ear of corn in the year that it was grown and then have me pay a percentage of that? Because that's what they're saying with staking.
Right.
Essentially,
it's basically charging you for the eggs that your chicken hatches that you cook in the morning.
And it all ties back to this ritual of reporting our information to them. And they just, I think it was actually since 2020, they introduced a new 1040 form which asks about digital assets. And they just lean on the ambiguity of the language and the fear-based propaganda that you were talking about.
The culture of compliance.
And the fear, just like, I think there's ancillary fear, which, you get preoccupied with fears about cerveza virus. And so you are in a state of reaction rather than proactivity. In that state of mind, and so you are inclined to just kind of do what you're told. You see this most prevalently, in my opinion, at the airports when it comes to the TSA. Uniformly hated. Uniformly hated. Everyone hates them. Nobody wants to go through it, but we're all in this together, right? This is how it is. We at this point. How many years after 9/11 are we that we're still dealing with these goons?
Absolutely.
And back then, it was probably like patriotic duty, sir. Now it's begrudging hatred. Like, people hate going through it. I know they hate it. They just don't want to say anything about it. They just want to get through the gate and get to the other side as soon as possible. As can be, in the corporate world.
Yeah.
You have to be TSA pre-checked.
Right.
Like, are you TSA which means, you got to surrender even more information, even though you have everything on me. You have all my information. You don't need more to ensure safety, because you can't ensure safety. And it's that you talked about it offline, the convenience, the wolf of convenience, basically. And I feel like in many ways that's where we're at. But ironically, I was on business travel recently in New Jersey, and I overheard someone talking about how they're just going to go through the regular TSA line because TSA pre-check is so overburdened with people who are TSA pre-check. You're still standing in a long ass line, and so it's like they and you pay money, I think.
Yeah, you have to pay like a subscription or something.
I won't participate in it.
That's one of the reasons why. I don't think I've been on an airplane in. Well, I guess I went to Puerto Rico in 2016 for a friend's trip. That was last time. So yeah, going on almost a bit more than 7 years. And I'm just nauseated about it every single time I go in there. And the fact that it's still around. Like, I remember as a kid being able to just Stroll in. It's like checking into the bus station.
And I had the privilege of going on a trip to Thailand years ago. This is like 2013 or 14. And to get there, I went through Beijing. And it was interesting because I kind of feel like I got a window into where they want to take us here in the States.
Definitely.
And it's through increment, okay? In China, it's not through increment. Like, it's just we're going to flip a switch. This is how it is. But basically, you know, at the different checkpoints and whatnot, they had thermal imagery. Cameras, guys behind cameras basically looking at you. And then you did have to walk through a place where they wanded you. But I'm not like,
Whatever.
I wouldn't make it a big thing on ZNN
Right.
if I just had to be wanded or whatever.
If it was a private airport security kind of protocol company or something.
Yeah.
Not this government bloated bureaucracy.
Like you have to have our staff, our government,
right,
and all the creeps and the theft that goes on, and over intrusiveness. You know, one thing with like a metal wand, which you could even argue isn't going to prevent anything anyways.
Right.
People could put a gun up their butthole and stuff like that. Like,
sure.
There's ways around it. There are ways around the current methods. Not that I have tried any of them. I'm not trying to take over the United States by commandeering a fucking airplane. I mean, that's such a silly...
And that whole pretense...
It's a silly Hollywood narrative.
Absolutely.
The idea that, like, these guys from a cave, like, took over and were able to blow up this, like, incredibly significant... What if they did it to the White House, you know?
Oh,
it's just hilarious. But in China, it was less invasive in a way. They didn't like have some low IQ,
sex offender.
you know, high school dropout sex offender patting me down and like getting his rocks off from going up to resistance on the thigh,
right?
Which is what they tell you, by the way.
Right.
They just scan you with this advanced technology and send you on your way. It's actually much more efficient. Nobody put their hands on me or anything, but I feel like that's how they get the American public to like accept that. It's like if they just set up a bunch of AI cameras that face scan you and bioscan your iris and thermal imagery, you know, people would be kind of alarmed if they went from 0 to 60 like that. Instead, they have to implement this like bullshit, you know, continuum of like incremental, like first it was just search your bags and metal scan, and then we introduced these 3D body scanners, and you don't want to do that, well now we have this like special pat down procedure, and then there's surveillance cameras everywhere,
right?
And I've been stopped in Boston airport for flicking off one of the cameras before. This guy came out of a fucking wall and confronted me about it, and I'm just like, wow. But like they really want that total panoptic, almost X-ray vision control, not just at the airports, but you know, everywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean,
in your car, in the train, while you're walking down the sidewalk.
Right, from Jeremy Bentham to George Orwell, you know, just the Fabian socialist kind of model of incremental conquest through consent. Yeah, actually,
this is very relevant to one of the bullet points on our top 20 mega-singularities. Number 5, societal surveillanceification.
Yeah.
And if you, I know you said you haven't flown since like 2016.
Yeah.
But I don't remember back that far if they had signs about it, but they certainly have had signs the last 5 years about real ID.
Yeah, and that was the big thing that was coming down the pike in this time 4 years ago.
They kicked it down the road
with the whole Survasive Iris butch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we also point out, you know, the FBI finds DMV records is a gold mine for facial recognition.
Of course.
You know, so they're building, like I was saying about China and where they want to take us, like they are, it's a process of building the infrastructure to like roll this out in any kind of standardized way. Of course they'll fuck it up. Of course there will be issues where, your face looked, you wore different makeup, so our facial recognition didn't recognize you, so you missed your flight. Like, there's going to be shit like that.
Exactly.
Like 100%. But also, you look like this terrorist, so we're going to, you know.
Absolutely. We've talked about that exact topic. Twins in the wild that are completely unrelated.
I've seen them myself.
Yeah.
I was on a whitewater rafting trip, and there was a guide, doing the raft. He looked just like this guy in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And everybody in my boat knew that guy in my neighborhood was like, whoa, that's uncanny. Like, there must just be like sort of like a mathematical limit to the number of unique faces. Like,
yeah.
They're totally unrelated, right? But they look the same. It's like almost like a probabilities thing.
I think there's something like there's only really 90 or so unique sort of generalized phenotypes, and then within that there's maybe only 100 kind of variations. So you can set up a permutation where there's probably 1,000 people out there that look just like you, that you could literally interchange throughout the world.
Well, my family went on a trip to Disney World in like 2001 or 2000 or something like that, and there was this guy at the Jurassic Park. There was like a Jurassic, was that Disney? I thought that was Universal Studios. Maybe it was Universal Studios. And anyways, there was a guy at the like little kitschy restaurant, and we all just like looked at him and was like, that looks like my brother.
Yeah.
And we literally, it was back then, 35 millimeter disposable camera. We took a picture of him. And when we would go through that album, we would flip over it looking for that picture of the guy who looked like my brother. But he looks so much like him, like my brother, that it was actually hard to distinguish, to your point.
Yeah. And then we even had, I can't remember, it was a few episodes ago where we cited an example of this. It was two like redheaded dudes that found each other on a flight, and they looked literally exactly the same.
They were like,
and they were completely strangers,
but they were like astonished at.
They were like stunned,
because it's like, it's not like the kind of thing where everybody else realizes that they look like each other, but he's like, oh yeah, you look like me.
It's like, whoa, yeah, it's like a real life doppelganger, and that's
a problem. It's a problem for these kind of systems,
right.
Which, it's kind of like how healthcare is going, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And we've brought up the example, the Hollywood example from Elysium before, where Matt Damon's character is reduced to, for his medical care, dealing with basically a Punch and Judy robot, interface to get his medicine. And we've seen that as well transpire in the healthcare industry, this whole automation, this telehealth kind of idea, where the human element is taken out of the whole equation. Like, pretty soon you won't have to deal. It'll be sold to you as a convenience that there's no TSA agent, some high school dropout idiot. It'll be a computer, and you'll trust the computer.
Absolutely.
It won't be a doctor anymore. It'll be our AI doctor, who's far more intelligent. He can he's trained on large language models from all the different specialist disciplines, so he can bring together a more holistic view. This is how it's going to be sold.
Absolutely. Well, you already have that within the legal profession too. They had one of these large language learning models pass the bar exam.
And this is actually number 7. I don't know if you can see
artificial intelligence.
Number 7,
Savior.
artificial intelligence, liberator savior. It's not like we predicted this trend of artificial intelligence. It was already in full sway
for decades,
for a long time,
right? But
we have seen a huge acceleration since this point in the adoption of AI, the mainstream psychology around it. Like, ChatGPT is something that almost everybody knows, almost like Google. It would seem like overnight.
It was overnight.
Even if people haven't used it yet, they know what it is.
Yeah, and it's actually the fastest
growing application in the world ever.
So, even way faster than Google or Facebook,
beating Tetris from 1989,
which is wild. It's like more than Pong. It's unbelievable. So, and then that goes right into the next thing, virtual reality. what kind? I mean, the first thing that pops into my head is that Duncan Trussell bit of, computers used to take up whole buildings, then they took up whole rooms, then they took up the whole table, then they could fit on your lap, then they fit on your hand. Now it's wrapped around your wrist. Now it's going to your eyeballs.
Right. Soon
it's just going to be getting you off. You're going to be attached to like a skin suit, essentially, like in Ready Player One.
Yeah, the Apple and Meta prototypes of VR, which look a lot like what they wear in Ready Player One. I mean,
to the T.
In 10 years, that will appear as like an Atari does now. You know what I'm saying? Like this. Of course, the Apple device looks all slick. It looks kind of like the Daft Punk helmet guys, very space agey. But the idea of, I think that's like their biggest barrier right now, is the bio interface.
And this is where I
think adoption,
sensory deprivation chambers, full immersion type liquid, like wetware interfaces. I think that's probably the solution.
Well, I actually have a gift certificate sitting here on my desk. You guys can't see it because I don't have our studio cam on right now, but I have a gift certificate to one of these isolation tank facilities locally.
Yeah.
My mom gave it to me for therapeutic reasons related to my back. I've had a couple back injuries.
I have some reoccurring lower back stuff.
And you like Joe Rogan promotes it as well. It's like so much salt or whatever in there that like you feel no pressure from your own body weight.
Right.
You're completely buoyant.
Right.
And he'll take like edibles and stuff like that and do that. But eventually, maybe people will have one of these kind of tanks in their house, and there's actually been some very startling episodes on Black Mirror detailing this same kind of idea where, like Avatar, you go into this piece of technology and whatever your physical condition is, you're able to escape it into this alternate reality. Like Avatar, the guy, one of the protagonists, he's like crippled basically,
right.
But then in the Avatar land, he's all super capable and everything like that. There's an episode of Black Mirror like that too, where the guy, I don't want to see, he's an antagonist because he's like a bad guy in the episode, but he like actually designed this whole world for himself because this technology is just like proliferated, and so it's this micro story within a story about this narrative in this alternate realm. But like you eventually realize at the end of the episode, like he basically does everything he can during the day to get home to his computer liquid tank terminal to like go escape into that alternate realm. And I think that's like, even my father-in-law got one of the Meta devices, forget what it's called, the Oculus.
Yeah.
And he has knee pain and debilitating injuries and stuff that make it difficult for him to maybe do as much travel as he wanted. And so like you get this device and the idea is, with like Google Earth or whatever and these other applications, like you can like virtually travel the world. And we talked, I don't know if this is a bullet point on here, but I know we've talked about it a lot, the virtualization of reality itself to create an alternate matrix.
Oh yeah, I mean they've been doing all the brainwave mapping. The AI can now, just based on the raw data impressions of auditory stimuli, can already create kind of a rough replica of what the brain is actually experiencing in the form of sound. So they played like the Pink Floyd The Wall song, and just based on the brainwave frequency, they let the AI read it and then ask the AI what it was reading, and it produced a kind of warbled melody that was actually recognizable as the Pink Floyd song. I mean, it's not in full resolution, of course. It's very, kind of warbly and not high definition yet.
Right.
But that's within 6 months of this application coming out. I mean,
right.
What's
it
it going
is
to be in the
startling.
next 6 months?
It is startling the rapidity of iteration on this system that, to the average observer is something that just like happened in the last year. It's been in development for a long time.
DARPA.
It's just getting to a point of mass accessibility. One of the big hindrances to AI developments and efficacy as we experience it today, from my understanding, is the limitation of computation power. Because to instantly process your query and bounce it off the LLM models, I'm putting it very I'm dumb myself, so it gets into a lot of technological aspects that I don't fully understand, but put simply, to bounce your query off all the LLM models, that takes a lot of computation power, a lot of storage, because they're basically scraping all this information off the internet and other places to comprise sort of the foundation. And I think it's Moore's law about silicon transistors and how they will double in efficiency and reduce in price every 18 months by 50%. So it's just been a matter of time to where we would reach the cost benefit, to unleash what has been developed to the general public in a way that is profitable. You know what I'm saying? So,
and then you have other films like kind of revelation of the method type stuff, like Ex Machina, right? Where there's some, guru, tech genius, billionaire that's got this hidden redoubt somewhere with super sophisticated labs and equipment, top flight, top secret classified equipment that allows him to basically create a quantum computer wetware android that is more sophisticated and more manipulative and more intelligent than the billionaire and his protege tester,
right,
an analyst, and then ends up getting the better of both of them at the end. and that's an awesome movie. That's one of my probably top 10. We really should actually create a revelation of the method playlist
and do. I've always wanted to do mystery science theater.
Ex Machina would be like a
we need a third party, and
yes,
I have actually been tracking the G-Pool company, who is deep in the Theta network. They are supposedly producing a NFT application called G-Twin, which is like an animated avatar that can be used for live streams, and I don't, it's not released yet, so at this point, in my opinion, it's kind of vaporware, but the potential of it we could use. If there's a way, videotape us and create a 3D avatar to have an on-screen presence, that not only would add a dynamic to our broadcast that I think people would like, but I've also thought for a mystery science theater where they have the silhouette of these three guys, we could recreate that, and then you and me could be chilling on the couch watching this thing with our microphones.
True.
And it would be real-time animated. That's a concept that we've talked about before. I would love to explore.
I think that'll be probably accessible within the next couple years, honestly. I would not be surprised. Just like in the pre-show with the barbershop simulator track, how quickly before AI can generate whole games based on suggestions.
I'm a guilty party. I've kind of got into the
Mid-Journey,
the
and
AI. Well, not only the visual stuff, and actually our thumbnail for today's show was created in a AI app that you recommended to me. Imagine.ai, which is very fun to use, and I think can be useful. But the music AI, because now they have like artists singing other artists' songs. So like I've talked about Michael Jackson before. They had Michael Jackson, and I'm not a Sam Smith fan, but there are a couple songs that I like, that sound good to me, whatever. But they had Michael singing a Sam Smith song, and it sounded better than Sam Smith.
Oh yeah.
Of course I'm biased, with Michael or whatever, but I've seen others like that. Now it's like a big copyright issue. I don't know if you've seen some of that, but
then you have the writers' strike, and now the auto workers strike, and it just seems like we've got strikes, right, in terms of an option to exercise some leverage over the mafia oligarch system. But the thing is, it seems like they have more time to just wait out the average collective of people, because they have more resources. They have, the military and the police, and they've got, generations worth of planning. So the flash in the pan social uprising movement and all this kind of stuff, like Occupy or whatever, they can just co-opt it and astroturf it and reduce it and minimize it and then turn it into just a little agenda item and incorporate it into their broader strategy. So that's why I think it's actually better if it's an ongoing paradigm shift point of view.
It has
and
to
movement. It has to be a literal consciousness elevation and ascension away from all of the schlock we've been given, all of the counterfeit reality, counterfeit spirituality, counterfeit government, counterfeit economics, schlock that's been sold to us as the progress of the ages and scientifically verified by experts and all this stuff. So it has to be a full paradigmatic rupture movement that stops at nothing and goes on indefinitely. That's really the only kind of social, political, economic, what have you, gestalt that can possibly contest this hyper elite corporatocracy, technocracy putsch that's been in the works for, I'd say conservatively 120 years. That's a conservative estimate. That's when a lot of the banking powers had finally coalesced all their henchmen and all of this and modernized a lot of their long-ranging plans and all this. It was at the end of the 19th century. So it's hard to go against super dynastic, misanthropic, moneyed interests that are playing the long game and have been using and leveraging stolen funds for 120 years. It's extremely difficult to go up against a systematic force like that, because most people are just trying to survive and live and let live. And they know that, and that's why it has to be a full paradigmatic rejection of all of the counterfeit nodes of power that have been sold to the people for so long and inculcated amongst the masses for so long. And it can't be anything short of it.
It makes me wonder about the lifespan discussion and how much of that is propaganda.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, if they inculcate people with the idea that they'll be lucky to live to 75.
80, yeah.
80 years old. Oh, 90 years old. He lived a full life. We should be celebrating his death.
Well, I mean, if you read, a lot of these transhumanist types and the World Economic Forum ideologues like Harari, he thinks that in the 21st century, the big project will be digital consciousness immortality.
Mm-hmm. Well, they clearly have been inculcated with the idea of a limited biological lifespan and are trying to overcome that.
Definitely.
It's just, it's sort of like a chicken egg type of scenario in my mind. Like, how much of what we see physically is actually inculcated mentally and is related to that, rather than, obviously, if you get in a car wreck at age 50,
right?
That's a different sort of scenario. But like, it's been said, like, nobody dies of natural causes anymore because we know how you died, blah, blah, blah.
Right, and 70 is the new 40, and, everyone can just have their AI blood boy here pretty soon.
Right.
I think, though, that is definitely something that's going to be sold to the public. Like, we need to have less people, and people need to stop having children, because we figured out how to live forever, baby. We have all the tricks of the trade. We can incubate designer babies that can live 300 years because we've got anti-aging stem cell nanotech,
right,
that can go in the body and reassemble cells and invigorate and reverse aging and all this kind of stuff. And if we can live forever, we need to not trouble any further generations. We need to just ride this wild ride out, man. I mean, that's the kind of anti-humanism and technocracy that's trying to be sold to the people, is the progress of the ages.
Over the last few months, which has probably been the roughest few months in terms of like frequency of ZNN broadcasts, we have been quite active on, I almost hesitate to call it X, it's Twitter. It's Twitter. It's still twitter.com. You go to twitter.com, it's Twitter.
Right.
Tweet is a verb. Don't abandon it. It's fine. Don't need to just adopt the next new thing. But we've talked about that a lot on Twitter back and forth. And I've seen different arguments, against that idea. And I wanted to play this clip. I think it's apropos to what we're talking about. In terms of this this merger of AI and the inculcation of
human values and what's supposed to be important and what priorities we're supposed to have and all this kind of stuff, and how this techno-oracle regime, or this coming techno-oracle regime, will have its own type of spirituality that will be seen as superior and the best synthesis of all possible interpretations of XYZ religion or wise teacher or what have you. So I mean, it's almost like that's a property of the new age, is having this techno-oracle kind of decide things once and for all.
Right.
We AI does know the meaning of human life, guys. With all these lingering issues and epistemological debates and philosophical quandaries and religious mysteries, let's just forget about all that stuff. Okay, the AI has figured it out. Okay.
Former student, he's a colleague of mine now, who's worked with large language models for years, and we've started experimenting with these sorts of things, producing a virtual Nietzsche. We have a virtual King James Bible, and so you can ask the Bible any question. I know, it's very strange. It's like, I don't even know what to think about that, because the AI system, the large language model, does capture the spirit of a text, and there's a lot of biblical text. And now if you have a system that speaks, what voice is a system that speaks in the voice of the Bible? What the hell voice is that?
Hey, boys.
It's,
no, I don't know if that would be it. That sounds almost like a pervy dude kind of, hey, boys, welcome to the Bible. Now I'm trying to think of who it would be. Oh, maybe Morgan Freeman,
Right. Right,
Welcome
right.
to the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good person.
Morgan Freeman would be good.
I think they'd let you do a couple chapters, at least an apostle.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think they'd let
I
you.
could be a crazy Old Testament prophet.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
I think that'd be it.
Yeah, you'd be a crazy old. Well, you'd be a prophet, huh? You fancy yourself a prophet, Jordan?
Absolutely.
A bit egotistical, if you ask me.
Oh, sure. Well, Morgan Freeman already played God in a movie, remember? So, I mean, that's just kind of hackneyed and lame. But
he's trying to relate to Jordan. Jordan seems to be on the wrong podcast, if you ask me. Like,
right.
But maybe that's what they think, that the chemistry of like the contrasting
generations,
characters and generations. Like, he's this supposed intellectual, and Theo's a country comic.
Yeah, the thing about JP is he seems to wear a new Two-Face quilt coat every single month. It's like he's got this unlimited tailor budget.
It's like an inside joke with somebody.
It is. It is. It's got to be, because it's kind of like a clown outfit a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he is sort of like a public jester in a lot of ways.
Now, I wonder where this development came from. Like,
probably the Daily Wire.
Is it his narcissism that, now that he's making, really good money, this is what he naturally likes and would, want to put on his body to present himself? Is it a play on like the elbow patches of my Professor Pass? Like, this is like an extenuation, like an addendum to that whole thing, like an exaggeration of that? Or is it like somebody made fun of the patches and now I'm going to take it to the next level to kind of show you, I'm going to just be eccentric and different, and, for my personal branding, like, he gets to take all these fancy photo shoots and whatnot and, put himself on this little Daily Wire pedestal. It's pathetic. It's kind of lame.
Yeah. I mean, it also captures the spirit of the text. Like, really, each one of these words in these large language models are just mathematical algorithmic formulas, essentially. It's like a plug and play input output kind of thing.
Yeah, like, I don't know what he.
It's like, are you really inferring that AI is God? I mean, because that's sort of the implication here.
I'm sure you would love, as I would, to interface with this virtual King James Bible. Because, like, what does that look like exactly? Instead of because you can, I know the King James Bible is already searchable. So, like, you can go type in whatever search you want and find the text and then read it for yourself.
Right.
But instead, you've created some sort of system where it's processed the text and it's generated some proximity mappings between the words, and it maybe can understand your potential intent of the question at a deeper level than like just a textual search would. But at the end of the day, I have to imagine their virtual King James Bible is like some sort of synopsis, some sort of summarization produced. That's Gen AI, where we're not just gonna take the text that we find and replicate it to you, but we're gonna actually synthesize it and generate all new text based on the black box of LLM, understanding of your question and what we find in the text, and it's giving him this illusion of spirit. Like, and I'm not even saying that like there's a spirit to be discerned in the text.
Right,
like,
exactly.
If there, and that's debatable, right? Like,
it's
if
debatable.
there is a spirit to be discerned from reading the text, which we've talked about on past shows.
Yeah.
If that's debatable, well, it sure as hell is debatable when you're talking about an AI system. Like, it's a fucking joke.
Yeah.
It's a fucking joke, and it's a fool's errand.
Right.
For him to even be really entertaining that idea.
Well, it's the whole Arthur C. Clarke thing of any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. You know, for this 1962 born, you know, narcissistic and pseudo-intellectual boomer, you know, it is magic.
Right.
It's almost like,
oh,
it's the new Oracle at Delphi.
Right.
You know, and I think that's exactly the kind of cultural ideology that backs a lot of this technophilic, technocratic governance modeling that's been proposed to the masses, and just kind of priming the pump and predictively programming this idea that, yeah, you know, it actually would be kind of cool if we just had a super smart computer that just made all of our decisions for us, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the thing is, in the abstract, right, you can entertain that as an interesting thought experiment, but when you really think about it, it's like, who's programming the code?
Right.
Who are the engineers that are preserving certain reality principles and epistemological paradigms that are just injected into the AI and is presuppositional? It's just a part of the premise of the computation that all this, you know, potential deception and illusion is just baked into the programming.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I know I'm an extreme layman, so I would invite any, you know, AI, ML, data scientists to come on and disagree with me. But at the end of the day, I feel like most of software is still an if-then statement. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to AI and, like, at least the modern incantation of it, like ChatGPT and that whole thing, it seems like almost if Wikipedia is true, then this. So like you put in a counter that, yeah, it can understand your question. It understands your question is coming from a perspective outside of that foundation, and will correct you. You know, and it's extremely dangerous because people are already, as we talked about before,
highly suggestible.
Highly suggestible in a condition of fear to be basically led to slaughter. Yep. And as soon as, like, your new authority figure, take TSA agent, take clerk of court, take your sheriff, is a robot, there's no debating anymore. Mm-hmm. There's no human, like, level of discourse or discretion. It's going to be my way or the highway type of thing.
Right, which, you know...
or a couple other bullet points in there about dronification, the robotification of the military force. This all ties into that. As we alluded to before, Elysium, which depicts this dystopic future that they have planned for us, where we're essentially governed by AI and robots. Mm-hmm. That is materializing before our eyes. Like,
it is,
you know.
And then, you know, they have full mapping of where everyone is, and everyone is already put into these super data systems where predictive models and, you know, DARPA avatarization schemas can predict your behavior better than you can sometimes.
Yes.
Like, they can give a probability schema for any given activity at any given time of the day that you may or may not be doing.
I worked with a guy who, previous to working with me, he worked at a company called Experian. Mm-hmm. You might recognize Experian because they're one of the 3 main credit bureaus in the country. So if you don't pay your auto bill or whatever, it goes to Experian, and then they calculate your credit score. They are a publisher of credit scores. And that organization sells predictive analytics to various industries based on all the financial data that they aggregate on you. And he told me that they can predict, this is like 2014, 2015. So whatever he said was about how it was before that. And now we're in 2023, right? So so this capability of predictive analytics is only getting more advanced, only getting more mature, only getting more fine-tuned. So he was saying then they could predict with I think it was like an 80 to 90% accuracy what you were going to buy a month from now. Okay?
Jeez.
And Experian isn't even as advanced as, say, Amazon, who not just can predict, they can influence what you're going to buy. So, I think companies like Amazon and Google are going to become de facto credit reporting analytics companies in a way, because they're going to control so much of the overall economic activity. They can sort of corner the market in a competitive way. They have the differentiator of being able to predict and influence what you're going to buy so that you buy their stuff. And they will do it with remarkable accuracy, and now we're just talking about shopping at the company store, and then with this whole advent of tokenization of not just money but products and goods and everything, the digitalization and the traceability that will imbue into the system. It really is fiat on top of fiat on top of fiat, and it's all for their benefit. Like, the prediction, yes, you will perceive it as like convenience, because you'll get what you want and you need like on time or whatever, but one has to wonder what kind of plantation you're buying into. Especially when we're talking about monopolies and cornering the market. Oftentimes companies like Google will offer their services for free to get you into providing your data to them, and then they'll turn around and charge you down the road. So whatever like fluff and benefit we feel like we're enjoying from the current like economic status quo in terms of like free second day delivery and all these like little perks of participating in the system, the ease of buying and all that, like I think eventually it's not going to be as like cost effective to use it. It'll be more financially draining to us and harmful, but at that point we won't have an option but to use it, because all the mom and pop alternatives have been turned off. That's my prediction.
Yeah, that's
for the next like 5 years, I would say. In terms of the overall direction.
Well, just look at the difficulty with which any given person now is, able to stop using their smartphone and just go back to a dumb phone. So I understand that argument, because it's like people have gotten used to a certain level of informational digestion and convenience that it's going to be very hard to, just retroactively undo that association. It's almost like, literacy is kind of like a one-way street. Like, you can't learn to like unlearn how to read. It's similar with this technology stuff. Like, it's going to be very difficult for people to unlearn how to not be constantly
actually
engaging
reminds
with
me
it, right?
Reminds me of an article I saw today. This guy was, to your point, driving. I hate to laugh, but he was driving via Google Maps and went off of a bridge that collapsed 9 years ago, and it had not been updated in Google Maps.
Oh my god.
And he died. He drowned. His Jeep went into the bridge, or into the water below the bridge, and he drowned. This is in Hickory, North Carolina, my man.
Oh my god.
I'm telling you, North Carolina is leading the way in idiocracy. But
Jeez.
yeah, so his family's suing them because they, and I'm no defender of Google. I'm over here criticizing them, but They're suing them for negligence because I guess people had complained like, hey, this bridge is collapsed. You need to update Google Maps. And they didn't. And so the guy was following it and went off the bridge and died.
Okay.
You know,
are you going to sue Rand McNally?
right.
I mean, come on, you got to use common sense.
Google, it's a privilege. It's not a right or anything like to use Google Maps. Like nobody has to use Google Maps.
No one has to use Google Maps.
Google Maps, and I don't think they make any sort of warranty or guarantee about the accuracy of what they provide.
No, they don't.
In fact, one should probably investigate how they're able to just go around and collect all that data and map it and like get public. They're buying data from public sources and private sources.
Google
and stuff.
Maps misdirects people all the time.
All the time. I found another one. I used to use this in my past corporate life.
You don't just. I mean, gosh, like.
This woman had her house demolished by mistake because the demolition team used Google Maps and they picked the wrong house.
Oh no! Well, that's not necessarily Google Maps.
No, again, like
right.
I think they should sue the demolishers.
Right.
I think if anybody should be sued for the bridge thing, it should be the city. Why is there not at least a cone there? You know what I mean? Like, it's not Google's job to like keep all that information updated. It's in their best interest. But like, you don't even pay for Google Maps, do you?
No.
I mean, you pay for your like phone and your internet connection, but you don't pay for it.
No.
It's a free service. So I'm not a Google defender, but to the whole concept that you were talking about, like where people are just being sort of subsumed by this. It's become conditional. What was standard communication protocol for us growing up with landline telephones is like totally bizarre for our kids. And I actually had a friend, he's in his 60s, and we were just chit-chatting, and he's like, how did we get around before cell phones? Like, if we were gonna meet somewhere and this and that, like and I was like, I should be asking you that, my man, because I didn't have a cell phone till I was over 20 years old,
right?
And that was 2008, 2009,
right?
Is when I got my first cell phone, which is maybe even weird to my peers in college, because many of them had cell phones, I didn't have one.
I didn't have a cell phone in college,
but like.
Either.
I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't doing the level of like socializing that he was, but like that's a question for him. Like, how did you guys do that? Because I don't know. Like prior to college, my experience was neighborhood kids. Like, you know, we might aim, you know, AOL Instant Message to like meet up somewhere, but I guess we would call the landline and be like, "Hey, is so and so home?" And
well, actually, a lot of people who are employed at various venues and places of business, they were tasked with giving people directions.
Right.
So you'd call up the thing like,
hey, do you know around here?
How do you get here from this location?
Nobody knows any of that shit anymore.
People don't know any of that anymore.
Right.
So
I've found that as well. Like if I'm lost in an area and I stop at a gas station, I might as well just like hit my head against the wall because the person's like,
they're not gonna
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
you can't get reception? Oh, that sucks. I mean, it's like they don't even say, "Oh, well, we have some maps for sale." Like they don't even have maps.
Oh
for
yeah,
sale.
they don't.
You know, it's like, oh, I don't know how to get there, but here's these.
Why would
maps.
they sell them? Nobody would buy them.
No one can read them. Oh man, yeah. See, that is a good example of that because people don't have physical maps anymore. You know, and. How many more areas of life is the technology going to become smarter and the people going to become dumber? It could be every sector of life. I mean, if people just let this Heideggerian dilemma just continue on where there's no real resistance to these technological takeovers and everyone just buys the lie that it's the progress of the ages and science and, you know, just let it happen, man. You know, I think like at what point will people not even be able to remember because their memory has been outsourced to these devices? They won't remember where the gas station is at the corner. They've like outsourced that particular memory to some technological feedback loop that they rely on, like Alexa Home, or their car navigates them everywhere. It's a self-driving car. I mean, how many other areas of life are humans just going to become so hyper domesticated and replaced by AI robotic influences?
Well, I mean, I look at the point 4 on our list of mega singularities from 2020. 2020 American election theater. Can the U.S. corporation reinvent itself again?
Well, 2024, here we are again.
Here we are again.
Deja vu.
This is why I think it's apropos to be going through this, because like you talked about before, the cyclical nature, the suffering carousel, or whatever you wanted to call it.
Yeah.
I think the political cycle is a part of that whole fabric.
Oh, absolutely.
And we had other episodes in 2020 dealing with what we called Selection 2020, because that's what it is. Whether it goes for Coke or it goes for Pepsi, it was a selection, not an election. And even if it was an election, there's a lot of illegitimacy around the power of the office itself that deserves to be questioned. But we definitely saw the U.S. corporation, quote unquote, reinvent itself in terms of, I think there was a major pivot to a humiliation ritual. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because of what you're talking about with the dumbing down of the general group psychology and the acceptance of this AI alternative. Because with Selection 2020 and what happened very shortly after that, installation of Biden, and ongoing to today, was, what have we called it? Hologram Joe.
Right.
The avatarization of the office of the presidency, the creation of this character, which it's now in the mainstream psychology. I've heard people who were previously very conservative in their acceptance of quote unquote conspiracy theories, promoting the idea that he is at the least a body double, rubber mask.
I've seen that, yeah. But even if you were to take it away from the specifics of whether it's actually a crisis actor or something, or a cult thespian, it's also just the trivialization of the leadership. It's like kabuki theater, It's like showing
it's intentional.
It's intentional. It's showing that the entire political apparatus is a farce. It's literally showing it right in front of everyone's face. Be like, look, we have a dementia patient that literally makes no decisions for himself.
I remember very vividly, shortly after inauguration, and this is almost like the totalitarian's dream, is to be installed and then to be sat at a desk with a bunch of paperwork and to just sign these orders, and almost like Ursula signed that contract with Ariel to get her voice and everything, and it was in this magic ink, or maybe it's Ariel for Ursula or whatever,
right?
To give her voiceover, and he literally was picked up on hot mic saying, "I don't even know what I'm reading. I don't even know what I'm signing." Right. And there's all these fucking lawyers and hangers on, and what do they call them? Cabinet members and the members of my staff, and they're just all there for the photo op. They're salivating over him, just signing all these papers, and all it was executive order this, executive order that, undoing this or doing that.
Pet project funding for this industry,
and it's
exactly.
It was a very, because I feel with a Bush or a Clinton or whatever, they were still doing that, but it wasn't promoted. It wasn't actually like put out
Well,
there.
there was a pretense that there was some kind of comprehension behind the puppet.
Yeah.
Right. At this point, it's just gloves off, mask on.
Deal with it.
Right.
Deal with it.
Deal with it. We can literally put. It's like from the movie Idiocracy. We'll just have the lead porn star be president. We'll just have the lead OnlyFans girl be president.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter to the system. The system will generate any number of NPC kabuki theater puppets to parade around and pretend to make decisions. But it doesn't. It's ceremonial. It doesn't affect the real gears and drivetrain of the system. And people just go into sports team mode every 2 to 4 years. Oh no, we got to make sure we flip these seats, and we got to make sure we get these districts and this electoral college. I mean, it's a psychosis.
You mentioned deja vu. I'm feeling that big time with respect to the 2024 election. I feel like Trump has not said anything for the last 4 years at all. He's just been in hiding, basically, while the propaganda around him has continued. Now people will maybe refute that. Oh, he does this rally here, he does that rally. Those are basically like stand-up comedy routines.
They're just routines.
They're routines, and he hasn't done anything meaningful to resist what's going on.
No.
If anything, he's done the opposite. He will never even get. I mean, I guess I still have to defend him if like. People take his shit out of context, and then they're like attacking him for the wrong reasons. I still have to like intellectually like point that out, but I will always give the caveat, like, I don't support this guy at all. Like, he is a traitor. He's a traitor.
The whole
like the last straw with me to any sort of like positive feeling about him was his promotion of Operation Warp Speed and his continued collaboration with Big Pharma promoting the vaccines. It's like one of the greatest. I mean, it's very public health services-esque in his promotion of the great innovations which were predicted, foretold, and planned for by the medical authorities as this great innovation that like saves society. And it's like, dude, you are basically a pharma slut at this point. You're absolutely a pharma slut at this point.
You are the lapdog.
And you don't know shit about. I mean, are you even taking them, dude?
No,
I doubt it. No. I doubt it.
No, you're just filleting the industry that you don't want to have come up against you next time.
We do have a comment here on our earlier discussion about Google Maps that I thought was interesting. Hunter, shout out to you, my man. Hey, by the way, if you want to call in and participate in the show, we do have the lines open.
Lines are open.
The number is 1-855-877-5112. If we can get 4 callers in the queue, or 4 callers at all, the 4th caller will get 444 Tfuel sent to you. And you can verify with our man Riley last episode. He was that guy, and he got that Tfuel at the end of the show. But Hunter said, here in Oregon, this is kind of here in Oregon, a family got bad directions from MapQuest, ended up on a logging road, and instead of going back the way they came, the father decided to walk through the forest and died of exposure. Are you gonna sue MapQuest? You know, it's like if you take wrong directions and then you run into a grizzly bear.
Are you just going to get out of the car and go right to the grizzly bear because?
But also, are you going to go sue that person at the gas station who gave you the wrong directions, which led you to the grizzly bear?
Right.
Like, there's no liability implied when you get wrong directions. But
because
that's a sad story.
Now, it would be one thing if it was a self-driving car. That would be one thing. Because then you have no control.
No control over it, yeah.
That would be one thing if it was an automated car that was hooked into Google Maps and you're like, oh my God, stop the car, and it just
Right,
careened
right.
off the bridge,
Which has happened with Tesla.
Absolutely.
There, a lot of them have happened, and people have died, I think, from that.
And so that's an example where that is corporate negligence.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you're the one driving the car, dude, you're not a robot.
Yeah, right.
You need to pump the brakes when you realize, oh, there's no road.
Right. Why were you going so fast?
Why were you going so fast down that road that you couldn't see?
Were you not paying attention?
I mean, maybe it was a blind curve and he was just on autopilot. That phrase, autopilot. How much of human destiny now is just on autopilot?
This is why I brought it up. Is because you see that automation of our travel, and and how we are participating in that process of incremental conversion into autopilot, because to train these auto drivers technologies, right, they have to figure out how people drive, and the only way to do that is through connected devices. So that's, and this has come up in a number of different court cases where the defense or the prosecution asks for telemetry data on the phone. So like they can tell how fast you're going,
right,
whether you're stepping out of the car, which pocket you have your phone in. All that information is like being collected on the back end. That's telemetry data through the like tiny little gyroscopes that exist in your, they call them like actuators or something in the phone, that measure that, and they do it very precisely and can garner a lot of information about human behavior, and then they can use that to like train their automatic drivers, which, unfortunately for the people who crashed and burned they're in the beta test right now, so we're gonna lose some, and the justification will be, well, while we were developing seat belts, we made some errors and some didn't work so well, and those people died, and it's unfortunate. Right. That's progress.
That's right.
And that's what the scientists always say. That's it's like, if you could see me right now, I'm saluting the astronauts on the Challenger rocket. Like, they.
Oh, that's got to be some of the most
pioneers of science, and they sacrificed their life for the future.
Oh yeah, and we definitely still have that telemetry data, right?
Oh wait.
Speaking
of telemetry, yeah.
And speaking of telemetry data, what do you think some of the most important telemetry data could possibly be? Oh yeah, just going to places that are impossible to go to, basically.
So this brings up two other points in our Mega-Singularities episode, which I want to bring up, but I want to take a bio break, if that's okay.
Yes, I please.
But I want to talk about this number one, disclosure of advanced Tesla energy and propulsion systems, as well as climate war, which is another bullet point, because those are two big topics which had major validating revelations happen over the time frame between now and January 2020. Definitely. So anyways, we're going to take a quick break. Enjoy this.
Oh, check it out.
Auditory.
Scroll this one back about scroll it back about 8 minutes. There's a banger track that's right around a little farther back. No, wait, a little farther up. I think it's the one right after this. Just let it play from here. I think it's called Special Client is the name of the track, and it is just so good.
I'm leaving my headphones on.
Oh yeah.
We're back. Hope you enjoyed that bit by, what is it? Slower Pace. Barbershop Simulator. Check it out. Shout out to you, Slower Pace. And want to jump right back into our Mega-Singularities episode 43 of the Zetetic.news cast. If you're listening, please subscribe. If you haven't already, drop us a comment in the chat or like us on YouTube or Twitter. We're not streaming on Theta. They closed down Theta streaming for the time being. I think they're doing some sort of revamp, and maybe soon we'll have some new tools at our disposal to stream again on the Theta network. I know their focus is on building like the video streaming API and commercializing that, which we've participated in the beta, and we've been streaming on Theta Edgecast for the duration of its facility, but like I said, they closed that down, and there's supposed to be some sort of relaunch, which we will keep you up to date on as we trudge forward in the whole streaming battle. We're trying to do Twitter streaming. I'm not exactly sure if that's even live right now. I set it up. It looked like it was going, but I'm not exactly sure how to monitor it. It's not quite the same interface as YouTube. But we've had technical issues with some of the other platforms which we are supposed to be on, like Rumble, and Odyssey has different challenges associated with that. Part of it might be technical, like we don't have a strong enough like system to multicast smoothly on all of those platforms all at the same time. So this is an evolving situation. We're trying to do the best we can, but any platform you come across us on, boost us. We're extremely suppressed by the big tech censors in many ways, and any help we can get in overcoming that algorithmic suppression in terms of likes, etc., is going to help us enormously and will ultimately lead to better, more frequent shows the more that we kind of get out there. So bookmark our page as well, Zetetic.news. Join the Telegram.
Share us around.
We've only got 40 members of the Telegram, but for 40 members, there's still like an astonishing amount of content that gets posted.
Oh, God.
And
it's like my news wire.
yeah, and we don't have restrictions or moderators at this point really governing any of this. The channels that like we're on, like Telegram, you can just go in there and post whatever you want and offer any commentary. Some channels are just like, we're just going to put our stuff out and you can't like comment on it.
Right.
But we're trying to avoid that sort of scenario. But also, this is a call-in show. We don't have any call-ins. We've had people pop in and out of the chat, which we appreciate. But if you want to participate in tonight's conversation, we have a call-in line open that we pay for. Again, going back to, the more promotion we can get, the better the shows will be produced. The more features we'll add, like a call-in feature, which we didn't used to have. And if you want to call in, the number's 1-855-877-5112. And like I said before, if you missed it, if we can get 4 callers in the queue, that 4th caller will get 444 Tfuel, which is part of our whole, you want to call it a business model. I think it's more of like a content distribution model where we reward our participants, contributors, and hopefully eventually the viewers for engaging with our content and, paying it forward, so to speak, in terms of, the amplification that you provide by, watching, sharing, etc., our content. So maybe at some point you'll earn Tfuel just for watching and you won't have to do all those other annoying things. But that's
down the line.
It's again, the crypto space has been much maligned. That's another subject we should probably talk about a little bit, because I think it's been pretty on the forefront in 2023, and we've had what they call a crypto winter or whatever.
Oh yeah, the altcoins especially are in full hibernation.
There's a lot of attention being given to the regulatory landscape with respect to that, and that coincides with what we talked about earlier in terms of a creative destructive event and the whole trajectory of the monetary system. Also CBDCs and that whole situation, it all ties together and influences what we're going to do in the future, because we have been in a sense built, and we've built some of our quote brand messaging around this idea of decentralized content distribution, alternative systems, even though we're streaming on YouTube and Twitter, that circumvent the big tech censors, the infrastructure monopolies, which are actively trying to stifle content like this
and totally consolidated it into a panopticon censorship paradigm.
I mean, just look at what happened to InfoWars, which at this point is a relatively milquetoast outlet. And if they can, and Alex Jones can be persecuted like he has been, I mean, that might have been a subject we talked about in this January 2020 episode. But if we didn't talk about it then, we talked about it throughout on every other episode, pretty much. That was a major benchmark threshold, sort of like, if you want to think about it in terms of AI, like they trained the censorship model on InfoWars. And if you even come close to that information, you're basically subjecting yourself to suppression, which is okay. Like, we went into ZNN knowing that would be the case. We specifically set out to talk about the issues that they wanted us to talk about least, because if they want that, then stands to reason that those are the subjects we should probably be talking about the most.
Right.
So anyways, on that was just a little bit of a tech update with CNN. But back to the list, I wanted to get into a couple others that we talked about. One of them we talked about offline before the show, and I wanted to make sure we touched on it again, but that's the whole subject of disclosure of like advanced propulsion technologies, the existence of extraterrestrials, American energy dominance, and the whole petro system. And what have we seen since then?
God,
like
huge news blow-ups. I mean, Saudi Arabia getting ready to join BRICS, dealing directly with member nations and not denominating all oil transactions in the dollar. That's a huge development on that front. Huge.
But also the Pentagon's reports and congressional discussions around UFOs and UAPs, which are well documented. I mean, they happen. I think you've witnessed one or two in your own experience.
At least a two, yeah.
And what's frustrating about that subject is the psychology around the subject itself.
And the cosmology.
And how, the cosmology. Like, there's so many presumptions made when the subject of UFOs is even brought up. Like, they've been very successful in associating UFOs with little green men and aliens,
intergalactic travel.
Yeah, and it just becomes this big propaganda chaos machine, essentially, where I think the public discourse around it is creating more confusion than it was even previously. Like, there was a lot less confusion when you were just a crazy loon talking about UFOs. Now there's more confusion because there are public admissions of quote UFOs, but then there's further obfuscation of it. There's further debate about, well, yeah, okay, we see them on the radar signature, but we still don't know what they are. You know, and then also this linguistic game they play. We talked about words of art before, and how
lesser word magic, extraterrestrial.
Yeah, right. But like they changed from UFO to UAP, and that was something alluded to by Hillary Clinton on Jimmy Kimmel's show, I think, when she was running for president, because it was even coming up then. And she corrected him, like, don't you know the nomenclature is not UFO, it's UAP. Like, this is what we refer to it internally. And it's kind of like, so is that why you guys have been saying UFOs don't exist? Is because you just call it something different internally? And so UFO's not like in your vernacular, therefore you get to make this little semantic point that UFOs aren't a thing that even needs to be looked at. But now it's like, okay, yeah, UAP is basically synonymous with UFO, and there is a bunch of information that should be looked at, but we still don't know exactly what it's just like more order out of chaos, and the order they create is like, again, you mentioned cosmology. it's just enough, debate created to where they can create still a majority consensus that, well, whether it's our technology or not, it's this intergalactic tech. It opens the door to the idea of like aliens,
spacefaring civilization
invading, which is something reinforced by the Hollywood movie machine.
Total Imagineering. Right.
And we talked about in some of the earlier episodes the sort of already disclosed a plan to create a fake alien invasion and at least take advantage of one that appears to happen.
Space Force.
For governmental purposes.
Right.
The whole Reagan speech at the UN about, well, if there was an invading alien force,
we'd all unite together.
Yeah, that is
valid.
A totally valid. It's
agenda
not a conspiracy theory.
It's like a
conspiracy fact.
Like a conspiracy admission.
Yeah. A conspiracy reality.
Yeah.
That hasn't yet come to fruition. And it ties into another one of the bullet points here, where we talk about the drone opticon, drone swarms, and we talked also about holographic technology and the space hoax.
Mm-hmm.
Like the monopolization of space, the constant, seemingly annual warnings of NASA asteroid predictions, which never seem to quite come to pass.
But if you've ever seen the movie Greenland, you will see that combine that with the whole pervasive virus push and all of the digitalization of authenticating one's status and all this kind of stuff could be dovetailed in with like a huge aerial war that's passed off as asteroid storms, and they have cloaking capabilities and holographic projection technologies that could make it look like that. It could mask actual incendiary warfare with the holographic veneer of it being some sort of space rock coming down. And just the whole suggestion of a scarcity ball, that in itself justifies all the climate change ideology. Because if it is the case that we're truly on Mother Gaia spaceship Earth, and we've only got limited amount of resources, then that actually does justify calling huge parts of the population. If people accept that cosmology, then eventually people will justify all the scarcity that comes along with that model, and they'll see it as a rationale for this type of austerity, or this kind of antinatalist messaging, or this kind of environmental fear-mongering, and this kind of agricultural industrial sabotage, and then just chalk it all up to global warming, or chalk it all up to climate change, because we're in whizzing around in 6 different directions in this chasm going nowhere, and everything is perfectly in alignment through gravity, and everything works itself out, but everything's so chaotic at the same time. We don't really know what we're expanding into, and it's just this inchoate, cracked out, overly complex morass that I think is just a counterfeit reality. It's a counterfeit model that hides what is probably a realm that is thousands and thousands of times more vast than our little coordinate plane that's wrapped around a ball. And that's what we've been fed is, Eratosthenes, and the Greeks figured this out thousands of years ago with sticks and shadows and bullshit. I mean, you know, all of this kind of philosophical programming precipitates into the idea of the need for climate lockdowns.
Well, yeah, you on a previous episode we had Adam Green on, and you tried to make the point to him that the frame of reference for much of what is considered to be understood about space and our Earth is inculcated at a very early age, and I think he kind of glossed over that.
He didn't. He didn't fully.
And I don't know
internalize
if
that.
he has kids.
He has one.
Okay. He should pay closer attention because I wasn't going to bring it up, but now that you mention it,
It's literally from the day you're born.
we two examples. One is we ordered diapers this week for my 1-year-old, and half of the diapers had like a floral pattern on them. The other half had like space rockets and revolving space balls on the diaper. Okay, that's 1 year old. Today, I was coming back from
The crib mobiles.
yeah, the crib mobiles. I was coming back from a class with I was taking my kids to and from class, and my 6-year-old daughter, just out of the blue, starts telling me about how the Earth is spinning. And I didn't say it wasn't spinning. I just said, I don't really know that it is. I don't think it's spinning like they say that it's spinning. And oh no, she was emphatic. It is. And I'm like, well, how come? I was trying to appeal to like the common sense and experience that she would have, rather than going into all the other, you know, history and the established science on this subject.
The manufactured consensus
Yeah.
around it. Yeah.
Because this is how I relate to it. Like, I think one does have to like reflect on their own experience, and this does tie into, by the way, few of the points in our 2020 outline for Mega-Singularities, and I think it's again still apropos. Climate Gate, Space Force, Antarctica Gate, all these topics deal with the fake cosmology, which is given to us that justify not only a vast military industrial complex, boondoggle tax grift, but they also create the conditions for acceptance of things like climate change ideology, taxation, price fixing, scarcity, also cartographic censorship, you know, sort of mastering the domain and telling you exactly, well, this is how it is. But anyways, my daughter was emphatic that the Earth is spinning, and I was like, I don't know that it is like they say that it is. And if it is spinning the way they say it's spinning, how come we aren't experiencing wind all the time? Like, if the Earth was spinning at this constant rate, you would never experience no wind. And sometimes there is no wind. It's completely still. You know, and she kind of scratched her head and was like, well, sometimes the Earth spins really slow and sometimes it spins really fast. And I was like, actually, according to the people who are telling you that it spins at the same rate
Everywhere.
all the time, everywhere. And so why would we ever experience no wind conditions at all? And I guess if I was talking to some astrophysics wonk, you know, they would say, well, we're spinning with the atmosphere. And I'm like, but again, if the atmosphere is like bound to the physical structure of the Earth,
That's a
we
container,
would
right?
still have no wind.
Right.
You know, what creates wind? Oh, it's the sun and the moon and the heat and the cold pressure. But again, regardless of differentials in temperature pressure, you'd have this friction effect of this ball spinning within a contained atmosphere of gas molecules, which are not bound in any way to the physical structure of the Earth. So there would always be, you can create pressure difference through a differential in temperature, but you can also create pressure differences with force, and that force of the spin would cause some level of wind, like all the time.
Yeah. And also, if it's really going one direction at all times,
it would at least be always biased that way.
And then, why couldn't a helicopter just hover up and stay in that one position for a long enough period of time and have the ground move beneath it and then just come back down and land right at its destination?
I laughed at some of the flat Earth memes because they were so simple. But it's like, when you really think about it, a lot of them make sense. Like the one you just mentioned is one I've seen. Another one is like, how do Indian smoke signals work? If the Earth is spinning all the time, then the signal would travel. Instead, in those instances, they go straight up, so you see exactly where that person is. Again, I'm saying about the friction in the gas molecules, you can also see this with a train. If a train is moving and it has a smokestack, you see,
right,
the smokestack stays behind the train because there's friction in the air between the smoke and the rest of the air, and it's not just gonna it's not bound to the train. That's what they're alleging with the Earth, is all the gas is bound to the Earth, so
everything is rotating simultaneously, including the atmosphere. So it's okay, well, if that's the case, then there should be a difference in speed between the poles, right? Just like on a ball, it's going to have the most centrifugal force around the equator or the circumference versus the top of where it's spinning or the bottom of where it's spinning. And so it's where is that difference? And the ellipses that they allege, you'd have to have these huge kind of whiplash effects around certain trajectories in order for the movement that they allege to eventuate itself throughout a year.
Right.
So why don't we feel that difference during certain times of year where we're supposed to be going around some celestial body at a faster rate than at other times of the year?
Right.
So, and then also, why isn't it constantly a little bit light too? So if the sun can illuminate part of the moon, why doesn't it illuminate everything else in space, like all the little space particles and dust and everything? Why isn't there always some kind of ambient light? Because if all light rays were literally parallel rays from a gargantuan exploding, fart fireball 93 million miles away, then it would constantly be a little bit light. There would be no such thing as night. It would just be different hues of light all the time, regardless of where you are.
Right.
So I mean that's another conundrum, and then also the amount of stars that are supposedly out there. Why isn't it just a big blanket of, relatively light and darker tapestry in the sky? In other words, the night seems to be sort of a thing that they want to delegate as a property of space itself. That once the sunlight goes away, we see the true expanse of space.
Yeah,
and it's well, wait a second.
The mechanics don't
the mechanics
really add
up
because the sun, according to them, is a pretty small star.
Right.
So you have these much, much larger stars, but the mainstream astrophysicists laugh at the sort of flat Earth promoted notion that the Earth is acting locally, but that's actually what they're saying too.
That's where all of your observations are made from.
Right.
It's from a local standpoint.
Right. And so, like, to your point, okay, the sun is on the other side, so I'm not getting the reflection of the sunlight on all the matter during the nighttime, but I'm facing a bunch of other stars that, granted, are supposedly further away, but doesn't light travel infinitely? And regardless of how long it takes, we're still getting that full light source from these stars, which are ostensibly the same, if not bigger, than our local star.
Right.
And so why don't they, as well as the sun behind us, illuminate? Why is there night at all?
Right. Why is there night at all? So that to me is a big smoking gun. And then, you know, the whole thing about meteorites, right? Asteroids, you know, comets and craters and all this kind of stuff. Again, if we're in an acentric universe, then you ought to have meteorites coming up from the horizon and terminating towards Polaris. When have you ever seen that? Never.
I saw a meme pointing this out, and I haven't done a full assay, obviously, of every quote-unquote crater on the Earth, but it was pointing out that all the craters that they do promote are at 90 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, meteor comes straight down,
Always.
essentially. But what if, like you say, why wouldn't some of them at least come at an angle?
Right.
And they wouldn't create that same kind of perfectly circular
Pore.
crater.
Exactly. A basin formation.
Yeah.
Why isn't it like a sidelong?
That was another point you made to Adam, who actually used the meteorite example as his evidence that
Space has got to be real, guys.
he didn't really understand, I think, what you were saying. I don't think he was able to compute it.
Well, I mean, I'm always fascinated by things that, you know, I can't fully exercise dominion over. Everyone is, right? But guess what? We don't have empirical dominion over the light formations or the environment that we call the sky. We just don't. Our craft stops working after a certain altitude, and you just literally have to believe the space cowboy mythology in order to, from government offices and conflict of interest corporations, that everything they say must be true. So if you're going to take a naive realist standpoint on that, then you've got to kind of accept carte blanche whatever any scientific authority says.
That's the real danger zone we're in right now, where and I can pull it up while I'm talking about it, but like NASA announced UAP director of research, I think. NASA appoints new director of UFO research in push to examine one of our planet's greatest mysteries. This came up 1 week ago, and I had to bring it up in the context of our post here from 2020 around, propulsion technologies and the disclosure of perhaps reverse engineering, because now, I mean, this is... It's mainline news, right? It's not UFO, it's UAP, like I talked about. We've got NASA appointing a director, and it's like, oh, so now I'm supposed to listen to this guy, who's probably just as good as the CDC director in terms of the accuracy of information and the reliability and what I should even be listening to as far as, you know, the future goes. And does anybody really think any big revelations are going to come out of these congressional disclosures? I think it's more order out of chaos, propaganda, messaging. And then of course we also have
It totally is.
the Mexico City alien, which is
Plaster.
Probably. I'm trying to think of something that's been memeified.
It's like you go to Party City and you get one of those paper mache, Mexico alien piñatas.
I mean, my mom asked me about this. She's like, I know. You're a believer in UFOs. What do you think about this? And I was like, I feel like I'm at the NC State Fair, and there's a trailer there, and I'm supposed to pay $3 to go in and see this freak show. And I go in. I've paid my $3. I got my ticket, and there's a botched bread baking experiment covered in flour. Like, are you kidding me? I'm supposed to Are we supposed to be in awe now? Like, it's almost disgraceful. Like, because there's a lot of people in the quote-unquote truth community who've been waiting for years for disclosure. I've talked about it quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Are they excited now?
Here's the big reveal, guys.
This is it. Mexico City. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
I mean, let's be honest. All of this is to represent the idea that life forms from beyond our capability to explore. Oh, they're just these small little things who, maybe they've got telepathic abilities or something, but look how shrimpy they are. I mean, we're clearly going to dominate this, We're in control of everything, guys. Don't you worry. These UFOs aren't really a threat. Look at these paper mache dolls here. These aren't a big threat. Again, it's also trying to prop up the evolution yarn. The monkey man, space testicle, Mother Gaia type stuff. Mystery school, power of suggestion narratives.
It looks astonishingly like the E.T. from the Spielberg movie.
I know. It's just a smaller version of E.T.
Yeah.
What? Wow.
To predict the revelation of the method, the predictive programming. I mean, when was that seed?
How prophetic.
When was that seed planted?
Right.
When did E.T. come out? That was like late 80s? Early 90s?
Yeah, I was going to say maybe 89 or 90.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's almost too on the nose. Like, I didn't believe it for one microsecond.
Not even a half a nanosecond. Like, wow. Oh, it's just small ETs. How did Steven Spielberg prophesy such an insight?
Right, exactly.
Man, there must be something magical about those Chosenites, They must just have an incredible purview of everything. Just like in the Kabbalah, right? There's amazing mystical quantum mechanics string theory truths that we're just beginning to find out. We're in the Kabbalah all along.
Well, why don't we dial up ChatGPT and ask for all the greatest insights on the Kabbalah and how it'll help us make it to the stars?
They already have a huge.
Sure, they do.
A compilation of how. We wouldn't be anywhere in space if it weren't for some special people.
That's true.
Nowhere. In fact, the cosmology probably wouldn't even exist.
And
today.
We should thank them for the
we
banking.
We should thank them for the banking system too.
Yeah. So another sort of ancillary to this, it does tie into the NASA operation, but it's on a little bit of a different narrative bent than aliens and space and all of that, but it has to do with the climate gate scenario. And what we talked about offline was how one of the major validating things that have happened since we published this in 2020, where on number 9 we talked about geostorms, climate war. You talked about Greenland as well. Is the mass acceptance of the notion of basically climate warfare.
Yeah.
And we're still, I think it's still fair to say the country is somewhat reeling from, and Hawaii is certainly still recovering from, all these quote-unquote wildfires, which ravaged, Lahaina, Hawaii.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time that I've seen online banter about the possibility of directed energy weapons being used to basically firebomb a particular location. I saw it first in California when a bunch of like really wealthy structures, residences, and whatnot were preserved amidst a sort of like unprecedented wildfire there.
This just forms a perfect moat of ash around this $7 million property. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was discussed then, but not to the same degree where we're seeing it now. I've seen it on like News Nation discussed, for example. I don't know if Fox News talked about it, but certainly on the internet, the idea that like something was not going, that was not a wildfire in Hawaii. You know, you see the authorities come out and say it was a fallen power line, and it was
how did it spread so fast?
Oh, but the hurricane came at the same time. But then, like, you consider that they can be right and wrong at the same time.
Right. It was in multiple locations simultaneously. That's why there couldn't be any emergency response to it, because it was everywhere all at once.
Well,
I mean,
there've also been like
fire grows; it has predictable paths.
Oh, but we had these high winds, which were able to turn a wildfire into something that would melt a car.
Yeah, and drip aluminum out of it down the drain. Yeah,
like melt the engine block, essentially, stuff like that. Also weird coincidences in terms of buildings burned
with a certain color that didn't burn.
Yeah, like
the whole blue.
Alex Jones actually did a thing on this to test the theories that were floating around on the internet about using laser, high intensity lasers to light things on fire, and he did find that like when you pointed these lasers at the color blue, it didn't have the same kind of effect. And this was corroborated by people out there in Hawaii, like observing things that were near where the fire supposedly definitely was, because it melted this thing, but it was close enough to, if that was going to burn, this would burn as well, but it didn't.
Right.
So that indicates some sort of like artificiality behind it.
Yeah.
But I think also, like, we can't rule out the idea that, the whole idea of like, don't let a good crisis go to waste. It doesn't even necessarily need to be that exotic, although those things indicate it might be. They can also start a fire like good old-fashioned arson way, and then steer a hurricane or create a hurricane system to exacerbate a pre-existing problem.
Sure.
And that's the essence of climate warfare, which is depicted in geostorms. And this is a form of warfare which, like the cerveza virus, is very, very difficult to combat, because like going back to our earlier, like when we started the show and that whole discussion about like how to solve things, like at that level, I don't know how you do solve them at the level we're at, like basically as average people, except for to talk about it, because the biggest hurdle to getting any kind of change at all with respect to that is just one of awareness.
Yeah, people even having the acknowledgement that these kind of exotic kind of upper elevation ionospheric kind of vibratory lasers that don't have like a visual register. So you see all these like fact checks and stuff around. Oh, these photos that allege that the directed energy beam came down, this is proven false. It's like, well, yeah, because actually those trillion-watt lasers and all this kind of stuff, it's not going to be visible. It's outside the visible.
Right. And also, we didn't have to get super exotic. I've got
a Fresnel lens.
I've got a video up here of a Fresnel lens, which is melting rock.
Right.
So it's just able to focus at a very intense point. And actually, Mind Unveiled did a good treatise on this subject, and they pointed out there are examples in history where, like in medieval times, they wanted to develop something like this to basically burn their opponents on the battlefield.
Absolutely.
Remotely. And so it's not like a new concept either.
No, it's not.
And it ties into point 11, which is really centered around Antarctica Gate and how they have potentially censored what is beyond or within Antarctica.
Created a big plantation for us, a plantation for us.
The bullets below that focus on NASA balloon technology platforms, which is another thing that has, I think, entered into the mass consciousness since we did this episode in 2020.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the Chinese balloon fiasco, which happened. Was that earlier this year?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. So where this balloon was like floating across the country, and it was supposed to be China spying on us, and it's kind of like, hey, balloons. People started to think about balloons, and then I think they started going down the rabbit hole, and there are a lot of people who are aware of this whole idea of NASA having an entire balloon network.
Oh wait, how many millions of pounds of helium did they buy?
They're the largest purchaser and user of helium in North America. But also, you know, in this presentation, which is on the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, they're showing balloon telescope platforms. So they're ostensibly floating these telescopes up there. Now, why would they need to do that? Because we have Hubble out floating in space and all that. But that's beside the point I'm making is the whole idea of like a hot air balloon with this big platform, the Zeppelins of yesteryear and their capabilities. It's not that they don't exist anymore because of the Hindenburg. It's because the public isn't allowed to enjoy those technologies anymore.
Precisely.
And it's sequestered into this military industrial application, which is, from a PR point of view, this whole thing I'm showing right here, telescopes. But what if that telescope is pointed at the Earth, and instead of a telescope, it's a giant Fresnel lens?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Totally.
Which is a quote directed energy weapon. It doesn't even have to be exotic. It can literally be a super high fidelity magnifying glass, and it would melt a car and cause all sorts of havoc, and it would be basically undetectable to somebody on the ground.
Totally.
And then you add into that they can, like, you know, vibrate the atoms, the molecules out in the ocean with microwaves and create hurricanes and steer them and stuff like that with manipulation through spraying and whatnot. Like,
absolutely,
it is full spectrum, man. Like, going back to the opening song, like,
that's so true.
What do you do?
Well, yeah, the rap. I mean, I think that to a certain extent, they've created a paradigm in which they want a kind of misery loves company effect amongst the population. Like they want people to internalize the elite's attitude towards the masses. They want the masses to internalize that and think of themselves as disposable in the face of all of these overwhelming methods of control and dominion. And so really, I think it goes back to the two wolves, with whoever you feed the most ends up winning to a great extent. And when it comes to the things that seem like overwhelming that we can't actually change, well, maybe those very things are kind of put out there so that we remain in a kind of analysis paralysis sort of state, and we don't enjoy the small things, so to speak, and get into the nitty gritty of everyday connections and routines and relationships, and really try to strengthen those things on a grassroots level, as the paradigm shifting, constant, perpetual reset that we need as the masses. Like, we need a reset too against all of this overlording that we've had to endure for all these generations. Mm-hmm. So it's like the Great Reset kind of works both ways a little bit. They like it to look a certain way.
I'll tell you what.
We know what the way they want it to look like.
I'll tell you what.
We've got our own Great Reset in mind too.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, they in a way, the impending economic doom can be a creative, destructive event for the people, because, like we talked about before, with the real estate bubble of 2008 popping and subsequently being reflated, if we had taken a different course, we might be enjoying the benefits of that, now, rather than what we're enjoying now, which is a perpetuation of the problem. Ugh. And so, in a way, I actually kind of daily, depending on my mood, I'll grab my popcorn, and like, for example, when the debt limit comes up, I'm like, please let it pass, and let this collapse start. Because I think one of the best things that could happen out of that is if government can't make payroll, and all these parasites who work for the government and do their bidding and actually hurt the people through their actions, whether they're aware of it or not, they need to experience the pain of insecurity, of a loss of that job, because it's not a productive job that they have. The bureaucrats, the politicians, the hangers-on,
representatives, and the staffers.
I mean, at best, like, we have some, like our area around here, Durham, there's this big headline about a one-time bonus for sanitation workers who are underpaid, and we need to, like, remunerate our valuable city employees. It's like, if we weren't, like the rap said, Samson's rap, like, blowing all this money, unbelievable amounts of money on bullshit like Ukraine, and how many hookers has Hunter Biden purchased with ill-gotten gains from milking off the system, and the federal income tax, the interest payments on the national debt. If, like, we weren't flushing all of that, I mean, money is how we make decisions about what's going to happen in the future as a species, and we flush 40+% of it down a black hole that leads to hell every single year. If we redirected even a paltry, like, 2 or 3% back to some municipal workers who actually made the city we live in be a nicer place, like, they would be well paid, fine. But that's all the level of government we need. We could pay, if we wanted to have firefighters, and we wanted to have some sort of, like, court system that was local and staffed by your actual peers who believe in freedom, like, that could be afforded. But this is not. So I actually kind of welcome in a way, like, because it's inevitable.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they say in Gladiator, the only way to, what is it? To deal with death is to basically smile at it back, something like that. You know, like you have nothing to fear but fear itself. Like, it's inevitable at this point. It's one way or the other. I don't care if it's a debt limit that doesn't get raised, or the Fed decides, like, we're just you know, suicidal, and we're just gonna raise interest rates and
back to Volcker levels.
Yeah, like
With
whatever the trigger is, like,
yeah.
I just we need to go ahead and deal with the pain. As much as I'm not going to enjoy it, I just don't see another way out. And the mother of necessity, mother of invention is necessity, right? And like when in those kind of hard scenarios, you find some of the most novel solutions being invented.
Well, and that dovetails back into what you were saying earlier about, you know, what can be done, like various solutions. The system is basically designed to be a Wile E. Coyote system, where it can just run on hot air and fumes and run off the cliff and still keep running in midair.
That's where we're at.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
We just haven't realized why Wile E. Coyote hasn't turned sidelong to the camera yet. He's still chasing after the Roadrunner off the cliff.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've mentioned this in various other episodes, but yeah, I mean, you have this crazy reflated, you know, bubble, everything bubble, that's been the result of, you know, unprecedented low interest rates and, you know, massive monetary stimulus, and now they're raising interest on the counterfeit that they did, and it's like, okay, this is a fugazi. Taxation, as we know it, is literally just like a shit grift. It's literally just a way to keep the population obedient, fearful, in line.
And I mean, look at what Gary Gensler and his crew of fucking turtleheads at the SEC is doing, you know, working with Sam Bankman-Fried, fraud, and allowing that to go on whilst deliberately creating confusion in terms of what cryptos, how they're going to be viewed in the future regulatorily. The IRS doing the same thing, basically positioning themselves to want to take a cut of every transaction. We're going to start tracking it, even though we're so technologically antiquated, we can't even get paper mailers out anymore. And
what is it, like nearly 60% or 50% of the staff is eligible for retirement or something?
Right. And they operate on, like, they have each division of the IRS doesn't have a 360 view of the information of each division. So, like, all they call it the master file in the Internal Revenue Service, like, which is all the names and addresses of all the taxpayers. Like, within each division, they don't have a way to, like, match them to each other. So there's duplicate people. There are people that are in both that shouldn't be in both, and a whole bunch of fuckery. They operate apparently on the COBOL assembly language, which hasn't been taught in universities for over 20 years, and all the people who know it and can develop on it are, if they're not retired already, are very close to retirement.
Right.
And so yeah, it's a complete grift. The whole crypto situation, though, is, like, really relevant, and, like, to this year, because I feel like we've had a lot of revelatory scenarios play out, many of them negative, but only insofar as it creates more confusion. Like, the SEC seems to want to create as much ambiguity as possible, while also creating this idea that they're like really hard-nosed and they're going to go after you if you violate, but they won't tell you like what you need to do to not violate. So they don't provide the like guidance. But then you have, of course, in that scenario, you have entrepreneurs and grifters who are going to take advantage of that situation and create frauds, legitimate frauds that, you know, should be probably prosecuted for what they are, which is fraud. But like, we don't need to create any new regulations for fraud. Fraud is fraud. It's already illegal.
Right.
You know, it's like imposing gun control. You know, like, murder is already illegal. Whether you do it with a gun or not, like, it's kind of like beside the point.
It's like,
if
reckless driving instead of DUIs.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And so I just feel like we've talked about this before, like two schools of thought, like as far as the crypto innovation question goes. Is it paving the way to hell?
Is it a Trojan horse?
Is it a Trojan horse? Or is it a legitimate innovation that is challenging the power elites, monopoly on money, and there is momentum behind that such that the power elite has to adapt, and they might try to co-opt it, but they have certain limitations in terms of technology that prevent them from doing that, and their own regulatory red tape, you know, which maybe they're trying to do that to co-opt it, but it takes a while because of that red tape, you know. Like, I go back and forth between the two. I'm not exactly sure where we're at, but I know the confusion factor is something that they're trying to amplify one way or the other.
It's definitely like an Overton window effect. You know, they have to shift the discussion and the perception phase by phase a little bit. Because just a few years ago, if you would have asked somebody, like someone who's been in crypto for, you know, 3 or 4 years, if you had asked them at the beginning of 2020 when we did the Mega-Singularity episode, hey, would you be really excited if BlackRock decided to just kind of take over Bitcoin? If they just had the biggest position out there after a while due to price manipulation, because they can issue paper Bitcoin and set up an ETF on, you know, NASDAQ? Most people will be like, oh, hell no! And now you have all these Bitcoin maxis being like, oh my god, I can't wait for the ETF, can't wait for BlackRock to get in. They've already won. To a great extent, they've already beat the psychology of the people who were supposed to be the best supporters.
Yeah, I think you might.
They already engineered the back door.
Would you lump Matthew Crater into that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he's promoted the idea that, like, this is good.
Yeah, and he's a cheerleader for the SEC now. He's like, yay, down with every other project in crypto. As long as the SEC can destroy everything except Bitcoin, I'll be happy.
Yeah,
it's like that's a toady point of view.
That's a big hole in his idea. You know, he argues that he's like a pragmatist. We're pragmatists. You know,
no, you're an exclusivist.
So I guess he's paying the capital gains commodity tax to the IRS, you know, to make sure that he's in compliance.
Oh,
but
absolutely, he has to do his, you know, proper regulatory bureaucratic due diligence.
Now,
sure that he has
is
all
it
his
the case that
intact.
the SEC's already said, and because the IRS has already said that Bitcoin is considered a commodity, that he feels like it's already settled, and so that they would never change course? Or that, like, the whole TradFi trajectory is to not change course, and so now that we have that clarity, we can move forward with, like, the legitimate innovation. Like, I just, that implies a level of trust that they won't ever change their position.
Well, yeah, and he kind of waffles back and forth. Like, on the one hand, he's like, no, he's not your keys, not your coins. All these custodian solutions are bad. But then at the same time, he's like, there could just be trillions of dollars that flow into this space, and Bitcoin could be worth millions of dollars a coin. And it's like, those two things are kind of at odds a little bit. Because is it truly an alternative to TradFi, JP Morgan, BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, Wisdom Tree?
Well, I mean, also, like...
or is it just another toy for those players?
Well, I think it's a tool of maybe not... I guess they play with their tools, you know.
Right.
They play with their tools of manipulation. Because, like, did the creation of a silver ETF lead to...
Massive
spot price? No. If anything, it just led to a manipulation tool set.
A short side manipulation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I don't see it any differently, and
I don't either. I mean, there's this assumption, I think, in the cryptos community that this there's this holy status of the halving and the 4-year cycle that every 4 years number go up.
Right.
But if you look at the introduction of all these TradFi solutions and involvements, whether it's the futures ETF or now the spotted ETF, they've only precipitated little flash in the pan rallies. If you look at the Bitcoin performance from, say, 2018 through today, there's a lot more red ribbon than there was the 5 years before that. So you already see kind of a logarithmic capping happening on the log chart, and I don't think that there's some magical stock to flow model that's going to predict price. I don't think that it's devoid or removed from other macro factors. I do think it is a fascinating innovation, but at the same time, this whole idea that it's immaculately conceived is just absurd.
He puts enormous
levels of trust.
Satoshi Nakamoto is like a central character for him in a cast narrative.
This whole thing is like, even if we find out that it's Ben Bernanke or Alan Greenspan that made it, it won't matter.
He said that.
Yeah. He said it won't matter if we find out that Satoshi Nakamoto is actually just the Federal Reserve Chairman.
Well, I mean, he talks about Satoshi being so wise as to like keep these million coins or whatever and not going to touch them. It's like, how do you know that? You don't even know who he is.
So
which you admit, you have no idea what custody or who's involved with that.
Right. I mean, what's keeping some kind of qubit, quantum mechanic, wetware AI from 2028 being able to just completely undo all the encryption around those original million coins and disperse them over 1 million addresses?
Right. Yeah.
And then there goes the entire value premise.
He mentioned something about like a hard fork that would deal with
proof of stake,
a quantum.
So like, or
he
if
hates
BlackRock comes in and buys up 60% of the mining power by 2030, they just fork it into some proof of stake, Ponzi show. Then that coin goes up to $1 million because no one's let in except the mega banks. And then the original chain goes back to $10. I mean, that could easily happen. So,
well, of course, the linchpin for him is, there's so many ideological Bitcoin holders who would never sell to BlackRock. It's like,
enjoy that hodl on the way down, dude. I mean, I just to me, it has a systemic risk attached to it, which is there is third-party counterparty risk pertaining to the original wallet, who actually started the whole project, and the conflict of interest involved in that origination. If we don't know those variables, and it's just a purely digital technological fortress that we have in Bitcoin, what's keeping a super sophisticated future weapon from blowing the boat?
I find it interesting. He claims that his sort of following the money as far as who he thinks the SEC is going to target next. And it's not Bitcoin, because you can't target Bitcoin because there's not a company behind Bitcoin. I wouldn't go so far as to say that's true.
No.
Number one, maybe less for the SEC, but the IRS certainly, if they can, they would. But also, if you're a pragmatist, as far as like institutional adoption, I think it's far more likely for mass adoption to happen with a cryptocurrency that does have someone to sue, does have a company behind it, because that's how business is done.
It's called consumer protections.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you have a company, you become a regulated entity. You look at what Theta's done. They have patents around their technology assigned to the CEOs and like the CTO of the company. They have ventured. That's whether like it or not, if you're a pragmatist, like, I don't see why that's so objectionable. You can still have a decentralized technology that offers a permissionless blockchain where anybody can go on there. And with Theta, there's use cases actually addressed that append to the initial innovation of blockchain in general, which Bitcoin is just a blockchain, right? Like, that's kind of all it does.
Well, yeah, his whole thing is that blockchain is meaningless without Bitcoin. That's his whole thing. Is like, blockchain is blah. The only thing that gives blockchain value is this amazing immaculate conception project called
I
Bitcoin.
think that's in his mind.
It's
that's
just very naive.
It's a first mover advantage, and that's all it is.
That's all it is, and it's that one. That's a big. It is all that it is. Is essentially that. Oh, well,
we did it first.
So therefore it's the best. And I tend to think that if Bitcoin is allowed to go to six figures and beyond, it's because the Federal Reserve has used it as an export system to absolve themselves of all of the problems with the legacy financial system. It's them putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. It's them turning it into a new bond market.
Right.
It's them importing all the derivatives and all of the TradFi schemas of the 20th century and just giving it a blockchain 21st century veneer. So
a revaluation.
And if that's really the case, that's what happens, then maybe it's true that we do find out that indeed Satoshi Nakamoto is just a consortium of Federal Reserve affiliated computer programmers and members.
Right.
And that's all it ever was, is a way to export all of the problems from the original financial system that was doomed to fail from the outset into something that can be claimed to be decentralized, claimed to be, we don't have any control over this anymore, hands off, but in reality, that was the whole plausible deniability schema from the outset. And at that point, if it is allowed to go absolutely bonkers here by the end of the decade, which I feel like the next 6-7 years are kind of make or break for Bitcoin. I mean, logarithmically, if it doesn't fulfill new all-time highs by the end of 2025, it continues to just kind of go sideways. The longer that happens, the more it could just look like kind of a retired emerging economy index a little bit. Like, it had its run, all of its percentage gains have basically been capped out, and now there's 30 ETFs for it.
Right.
And it's never going over $100,000 ever. And it's probably going to go below the last all-time high again. So, they're in the last cycle. So, I mean, does the scarcity proposition of 21 million exclude all other disruptive possibilities. Like, I don't know if it does. I think that, 21 million Pez candy dispensers could be valued at $100,000 each because of their memorabilia quality and because of their scarcity. But if there's not a whole lot of utility for it, and it's replaced by something else that is superior, like a
wise man once said, something is only worth what someone will pay for it.
Right.
And I think, Matthew's guilty of it. Many people in the cryptosphere are guilty of it. They use this back of the napkin math, looking at the total liquidity of the global economy or the M1 money supply and all these different factors. And they're like, if even 0.5% goes into Bitcoin, then it's going to go to this number because there will only be this number of Bitcoin.
Right.
But that's not true if, like you said, there isn't a perceived utility, and it remains to be seen. I mean,
and also, who are the major players that are hoarding wealth within the system? If it's BlackRock and MicroStrategy and a handful of corporations that are already predominating today, then Bitcoin just becomes yet another elite wealth preservation tool.
Another company store token.
Another company store token that's only accessible to people on the upper echelon and of society, and that by design, I think, is maybe the best overall argument for its price increase, is that it will become a tool for the rich to remain rich. So in that sense, if these big corporate players do come in, then the likelihood that you will see escalating prices will be directly correlative to the extent to which the elite want to just make, the top 10% want to control 98% of the wealth instead of 90% of the wealth that they have today. So in that sense, you could make the case that it doesn't actually matter about how much money is in the system. In fact, it could thrive and have much higher prices if liquidity is drained out of the system. You could make an argument that Bitcoin becomes like a refuge of last resort, and that it's like basically insurance on not being able to transact at all. So at least it can do that.
Right.
You can wait 10 minutes.
Which I think you're seeing in some
economies.
Well,
some of these developing world economies. So, I mean, it's possible that Bitcoin really becomes a tool of emerging economies to catapult some of the
challenges they have with their own central banking system.
Right.
But it can also be used in parallel to digitalize and aggregate some of the problems of the traditional financial system into a new system. Talking about that creative destructive event,
because I mean they could have it be like an extended hangout, right, where all these company stocks get tokenized and
well, it's kind of like the world, the whole impetus behind a world reserve currency,
right?
I mean, ostensibly countries were pegging their currencies to the US dollar because US dollar was a superior form of money to them. But then once that was locked in for most of the world, we destroyed that money,
right?
And we had the control over the money to do that. I say we, it's not we, it's them. Right. But you get the point. And that sort of consolidation of the supply in its control could certainly happen again.
Well, right, because I mean, in other words, there's nothing fundamentally keeping supermajority stakeholders in the future from just forking
the idea
Bitcoin
that if they were to buy this
Yeah.
percentage of the supply, it would rocket the price, and it's like, don't put it past them. They have the printing presses, remember,
Right.
so they can
do that.
and
But it could just be a way to just steal more wealth from people. Wait for
it doesn't
all these,
cost them anything
Yeah.
to print the money to buy it in the first place.
Exactly.
So that Matthew Crowder, you talk about these ideological hodlers who would never sell. Let them pump it to $1 million. Are you going to sell then?
Right.
And then once you give it,
Right.
it might be worth the cost to them to drive the price up, to get the inventory, to then gain control,
Right.
to then do what they want.
Well, yeah, because
they have infinite money, remember.
right. They could literally pump it to this crazy, absurd height, and have all of the most of the world's wealth get caught up in this bull trap, basically.
Chasing this
this
shiny object.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you can rug pull it.
Yeah.
And completely disrupt the logarithmic growth curve.
Well, they've already
take
admitted
it back to $1,000.
They admitted,
I mean,
another mark against Trump. That he admitted. He and Chris Giancarlo admitted, the former CFTC commissioner, admitted that they tried to quote unquote pop the Bitcoin bubble using funds they got from the Mt. Gox collapse.
Right.
And to me, that just is a little window into some of these factors we're talking about, that there are power elite who are watching this situation very closely, and when they can, they will manipulate the market by any means necessary.
And it could happen that they, instead of pumping the price and getting all the world's wealth wrapped up in a crazy bull trap, they could do the opposite. They could try to just absolutely do a massacre in the streets and force everyone in an inflationary environment to capitulate.
Yeah.
Out of no choice. And then they can sop up the supply. I mean, if it could get to the point economically where people couldn't even afford $1,000 Bitcoin if it came back to that level.
Mm-hmm.
Because who knows, maybe the money supply continues to crater, and the Fed just goes full on suicide mission, full on kamikaze, and just keeps the interest rates going to 10, 12, 30%.
Or Bitcoin's $1 million, but it costs $500 to buy a loaf of bread. I mean,
right.
So.
And then it costs $10,000 to send the Bitcoin somewhere because of fees, and it's like this doesn't actually necessarily alleviate wealth disparity at all. It can just be a tool of importing all of the problems with the legacy financial system, and just having an added veneer of plausible deniability that nothing can be done about it because it's decentralized. And now we're on Bitcoin standard and it's $1 million of Bitcoin, but only 0.5% of the world actually has any significant amount to where they can do anything with it.
Right.
And at that point it's just kind of a white elephant for the system. They could just collapse it back down into nothing and say, "Oh, we have all the supply. We actually like this other version of the code better, that's now quantum resistant and even more ESG compliant, and this old chain that was proof of work and has all these mines attached to it. Yeah, we're just going to let all that real estate rot, and that old version of the coin is now no longer supported."
So I think Matthew Crowder's a bit naive, because
naive
if they
about
were
the
willing
power
to
elite.
confiscate and make illegal the holding of gold coins, which they did that.
Yeah,
They did that
they rounded people up
in a supposedly freer time.
Yeah.
In our country's history, they could do it again. But we're over time. It's we're about half an hour past the end.
There's always so much more to talk about.
I know.
Man.
3 hours goes by like nothing.
Like nothing, and we even had a shorter bio break this time. It just goes to show how many topics there are to cover, and how how much is out there.
How we're scraping the surface. Really.
So what about in the chat? Was there anything else that came up?
Somebody said ChatGPT is very repetitive in its answers whenever I try it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a script. It's just an algorithmic script.
I tried ChatGPT and it didn't seem intelligent to me. I would call it artificial mediocrity.
Right. I agree with that. It's basically chat NPC to a great extent.
Ryan S. said, hi. I said, hi, Ryan. Hope you're ready for a good show. And Dharma Queen said, I know I am. My expectations are high based on your track record.
Cool.
Word. And Ryan's like, this is earlier in the show. He's like, we need to stand up for our rights like they matter.
Yeah.
What? There are no laws that say we have to pay taxes. Show me. Income tax is a contract. Don't contract.
Right. Yes.
What's up?
With withdrawing consent.
So we had some good action in the chat, but y'all need to call in next time. We didn't have any call-ins today. We've been streaming for 3.5 hours. We gotta you guys gotta share this, subscribe, like, comment, bookmark our page, and call in to get that Tfuel. Nobody's gonna get it. I'm just gonna give it to Xavier tonight.
All right. Thank y'all.
So, anyways, hope y'all enjoyed the show. We'll catch you on the flip side. Whoop whoop.
Yeah, it flies by.